Hello. Welcome everyone to the stream. Hello. Alright. Let me see something here. Video capture device properties. Device default resolution. No. Weird. Weird. Okay. Are you still taking submissions for games, or are you full? Pretty full tonight, but let's see. Been a long day. Thursday. Welcome. Analysis board, puzzles, learn, study. All right. Study. Are we full? Are we full? This is the question. No, we've got room for one more. I've got Tomas, Morales, Mule Skinner, Mr. Slow, Astrobate, Coffee, Snedstag, Move 11. Yeah, I think that's max, though. I think we're going to make it max 9. It's a late start. You can always donate extra to speed it up. But we haven't seen Nils in a long time. Nils always liked to donate, to push his game up in the list. Copy, inverse, section, transform, group, scale, filtering, blending, properties. We should be good. Alright. Do we have a game from Hey It's Miro? Good morning, everybody. So, we're going to get started here with our game analysis stream. Hey, it's Miro. You're the lucky 9th contestant. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Analysis board. Send it over there. There we go. Astrobate is obsessed with Krakens now. Alaskan Kraken. The Alaskan King Kraken. Love Kraken. Alright. Sparkle Horse first. We're just going to do them in order, I guess. If I don't get any, like, bribes. Sparkle Horse. I can't even say my own name. Sparkle Horse. That's just my Leechess account name, of course. I'm not literally Sparkle Horse. Sparkle Horse is dead. Sparkle Horse Thomas Trainson. So this is our first game from today. We're going to be looking at it from my opponent's point of view. Welcome everybody to the stream. Share and share alike. When I click on the share button, nothing happens. Oh, there you go. All right. There you go. I'm just waking up, guys. Figuratively. Done. Analysis. Okay. Here we go. You know, we're playing white in this game, but that's not really relevant. You know, I just want to help you guys get better and understand your own game. So we're looking at the games from the opponent's perspective, from the player's perspective. So in this case, Thomas Reinson happened to be playing against me, but that's not the important point of this game. We're looking at the game from his perspective. Okay, white plays d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5. I like the Grunfeld. You know, it doesn't seem fair to me. You'd think like the Grunfeld would be better for white somehow. But you know, you are developing the king side pretty quickly. King side, king side, king side moves, and white's developing primarily the queen side pieces, and the game's opening up, and so black tends to castle before white. White has to be a little bit careful here. So I played knight f3. My opponent plays bishop g7, and now, yeah, I mean, look at the statistics. Statistics don't lie here. Queen b3 has the best score, but I'm not sure if it's better than CD. The score is a little bit better for queen b3. It's surprising to me that that's the most common move in this position. I don't trust the Lead Chess Opening Explorer. I think if we had ChessBase or a premium database with all the games, master level and above, I am skeptical that queen b3 would still be the #1 move. But it's a good move for the Russian variations. C takes d, I think, is more common. I would call this the most common move in this position. Knight takes d5. You know, by the way, if white plays queen b3, you have to take on c4. Give up the center, but the white queen is misplaced in exposed position. Most famous game, of course, like Donald Byrne versus Fischer. Queen b3, Botvinnik. Well, Botvinnik played the Grunfeld too. Don't forget. Botvinnik actually, didn't he play queen b3 like on move 4? So what's that called? Like the Spielman variation? You can play queen b3 here. They're calling this accelerated variation. Okay. Not nearly as common, but it often transposes. Yeah, I mean, Botvinnik played both sides of queen b3. I mean, I have the book. My Grunfeld book is like the pages are falling out of it. The original Botvinnik RHM press book. C takes d5, knight takes d5, e4. Now our mainline modern exchange variation. This doesn't exist 3 knights variation. Who makes up that crap? There's like no such thing. B takes c, exchange variation, modern exchange. Okay. Here, c5. You can also castle. But I think c5, you know, c5 is a little more direct. You're putting pressure on the center right away. It's a little more forcing, but you do allow bishop b5 check. I don't think this is necessarily a dangerous variation, though. It's an additional possibility, but not one that should be critical. So c5 is fine. And now I played rook b1. I know a lot of players. Again, I don't think bishop b5 check is very important. This is also a move, but this is the other move that needs to be taken pretty seriously here. So rook b1. This became like a major variation around 1988. In the late 80s. I played my first game with it around then. I think I was actually black. I've mentioned this on the stream before. In a game in around 1988. Castles. And now bishop e2. I don't know about the history of Rook B1. I'm not sure who the first player ever to play that is. Bishop B2, C4. Now this move here is the main line only because Black normally plays exchange pawns in Queen A5 check and grabs the pawn on A2. If you're not intending to play Queen A5 check and grab the pawn on A2, then you shouldn't, do this move. Really, the only purpose of releasing intention here is to do this check. And then this is not good enough for white, so you have to do bishop d2, and then Black grabs the pawn on a2. And the theory here is extensive. So, not everyone likes to grab pawns, but I think like if I were Thomas or if I was playing the Grunfeld, you either go into this like myriad of variations with Queen f5 check and grab the pawn, or you play one of these other moves, either knight c6 or b6. I think if Thomas wants to play the way he did in the game, then you do b6 with the same ideas in the game, without exchanging pawns on d4. So he exchanges pawns and then plays b6. And now we look at the opening explorer, and it's just really weird. John Fedorovich. You got a Benko player playing the Grunfeld. Yeah, that's weird. He's a King's Indian Benko player. I don't know what he's doing playing like a bad variation of the Grunfeld. And pretty much no one else. Kaposhta Miklos in the 90s. Like, needless to say, this is not really the right way to play it. But we could transpose. Here's an interesting idea. H4. Not the safest move. Castles, and now bishop b7. And we've transposed to Halifman and Pishin. Halifman, speaking of Boris Gelfand, to be honest with you, I think that Halifman was the first player, so the first high-level player I saw in the database playing the Rook B1 variations against the Grunfeld. Alright, but anyway, that's just a coincidence. So Queen D3, Bishop A6, and now, oh yeah, there's a game from '89. But there was a Halifman game from '88 in here. Halifman Yapishin 1988. Alright, Bishop A6, Queen E3, and then he played Bishop takes E2. But I think that this exchange of pawns just helps white release the tension and make the position more clear. I mean, at the end of the day, I think this tension helps black. The pawn on c5 is more valuable. You could choose when to open the c file. You should keep that tension available. This is a good idea though, to play for Queen A4. And not surprisingly, it's been played by some decent players. And now here it's interesting, if you've got 5 games with white and 4 different moves. At the board I didn't consider this. Totally makes sense what Antich played. This move I'm not in love with. I mean, honestly, that bishop has a good diagonal. So I don't really know about putting the bishop on b2. I liked my move. And so again, we found another game from 1989. Valery Salov, who was top 5 in the world, probably, at his peak. D5. I think he became a little bit crazy or something. He just stopped playing chess. I think he makes conspiracy videos or something now. D5, Queen A4. So you're playing Ivan. Ivan Sokolov must have been quite young in 1989. Might be a couple years older than me, but not so much. Queen a4. Yeah, well, you're playing like Ivan Sokolov. Not bad. I don't think the variation's like good enough for black, though. So now I played bishop g5, exactly like Solov, and you played f6. And I mean, this is just not a move I would seriously consider playing. Being positionally, it solves the problem of losing the pawn on e7. But you block your bishop, and you also create a huge hold on e6. I mean, there's a possibility you can play f5 later and clear the bishop, so that's not necessarily permanent. And f5 can undermine my center. But there's really nothing you could do about the permanent nature of the weakness at e6. I mean, you can't make it go away. So once you played f6, I think, this is my whole plan to like stick a knight on e6 if I could get it. But here I didn't know where to put my bishop. I mean, I didn't really want to like drop my pawn on a2. And I didn't want to drop my pawn on e4. It's funny, I don't remember considering bishop f4 for some reason. I guess it was this lateral nature of the queen on a4. I don't remember considering bishop h4, although that seems reasonable. I'm not quite sure why I played bishop c1 rather than say bishop h4. I remember wanting to retreat this back to d2, but not liking this. What's up, Antonio, Mr. Slow? Social raid with the follow. That's from a day ago. Okay, so these are not new. These are old follows from the mini feed. Yeah, this is like made me worried about lateral f5 or something. Here, you see, I can't push or take because the f4 bishop is hanging. So that was why. But this is possible because, I mean, now the knight's protecting that, so I can theoretically just answer f5 with takes and no problem. But f6 is a horrible positional mistake. So what are your options here? Rook e8 is the obvious suggestion. And that's what Ivan Sokolov did. That's what I would do. I mean, I don't really see a better idea. After rook e8, rook f c1, knight a6, controlling this. There's also this outpost here. Solov played rook c4, queen d7. So that was kind of a failed mission. Black went out to a4 only to get driven back with tempo, and white won all 3 games here. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's not good enough. It's not a good enough variation for black, but I think we can salvage the position. h6 was played. Okay, this is a nice idea to sack the pawn, but obviously the question is, what happens on d6? So black has a really solid blockade here. But I mean, this is not a joke, man. This is not enough. So the idea is knight c6. Wow. And that's a scary pawn. I mean, not too many people want to allow that pawn to d6. But what is white going to do about it? You got to play bishop h4. How do we recoup that pawn? g5? Oh, stupid question. Ask a stupid question. That pawn is still scary. Does the engine think we have something better? No. No. This is the absolute best variation. Looks like. So that was best play. Best chance, only chance, really. Alright, so this is bad positionally. I go bishop c1, you play knight d7. And then, I'm obviously hoping to get my knight to d4. You've got knight c5, and there's also the c file. So rook d1, idea, knight d4. Black plays knight c5, and then I have a problem because if knight d4, f5, the queen on a4, it's really annoying, Now we've got a double attack at d4 and e4, so I realize my plan doesn't work. So I found this move, which is awkward for black to meet. Driving that annoying queen away from attacking my a pawn. And the rook doesn't have to stay here, unilaterally. Solov used rook c4 in his game. Here. And obviously, f5 can be met by e5. So there's no problem there. Bishop a3. And already I'm thinking about like good knight versus bad bishop type scenarios. But here you've got to find something. Rook f c8, rook c4, and now I really think that this is a concrete strategic threat to take on c5 and play with good knight versus bad bishop. But here basically Thomas committed strategic suicide with e5. I think this is a very unpleasant position for black. Now it's essentially worse. Because by playing e5, you give me a protected passed pawn on d5. Your bishop remains very bad. My knight is strong. You take away the d4 square, true. But ultimately, it can remove itself back to d2 and up to c4. So instead of e5, you got to find something else here. Black has to find something better. Why don't you play f5? Actually, simply counterattack the center. I mean, that's the whole idea of the Grunfeld. Obviously, f5 is not the safest move in the world, but you got to do what you got to do. And the point is, even if I take this, you take back with the pawn, but you're fundamentally undermining my center. And the important thing is that this pawn is loose. If you knock out my center, black is okay. Now, it could be a complicated position, because there's another possibility here. Knight g5, probably my best chance. Let's say you take out my pawn, and now I either recapture the queen or go knight e6. I guess I have to recapture to defend d5. Do you have maybe like back rank threats? For example, rook b8. But I think that white is in control here. It's plus 1.6, 1.5. But nevertheless, this seems like your best shot. Make your bishop great again and try to undermine my center. This doesn't help. And after e5, you're pretty much close to positionally lost. I think it may be like strategically lost. So now it's just too hard to play black with the bad bishop. And the protected passed pawn is winning. There's no easy solution here. Plus you have, two weaknesses versus one on the queen side. Well, this was a really difficult position for black to try to survive. With limited time, it's basically impossible. Even a computer would have a hard time. It was a cute trap here with knight e6 check. Okay. Alright, couple of mistakes like strategically that are important. f6 and e5. And that's all that I really can say. Morales is here. Morales, what's up, man? Welcome to Sicily. Morales is in Sicily. We're going to Sicily in October. Guys, we're up to 1244.99. That's a good rating. 1245. Okay, 1245. So Morales is now... You guys stop sending in games against me, alright? E4, he asked if it was okay if he submitted this game. We're just not going to talk about who played black in this game, okay? This is just some random guy. Karo Khan, E5, Bishop F5, main line, and now white plays Bishop E3. So, the interesting thing about Bishop E3, if we look at the database, this was played when Sladgie was playing poker. I mean, not all the games actually, but you see a chunk. Carlsen, Bariev, 2009. Carlsen, Wang Hao, 2011. Carlsen, Leiko, 2009. So in that period, it seems to me, around the late 2000s and the early 2010s was when this variation really became very popular. And I was actually not really paying attention to the chess world, and definitely not paying attention to between like 2009 and 2014, 2013 was when I paid the least attention to the chess world. So I kind of missed this. Yeah, there's a Kasparov game there that's older. I mean, okay, so it's been played. The older game was from 2003. There were some games there, 2004. So I'm not saying it was like invented by Magnus, but I mean, I think when it got picked up by Magnus was when it became really popular. And then, and then it became this later on. This is more recent. See, like the later... Okay, there's a Kamsky game from 2011. But I feel like this was a natural progression. Like, Bishop E3 was the trendy move, and then Knight D2. And you can actually combine the ideas. Because it's like Knight B3 and Bishop E3. But I feel like Knight D2 is newer. So I didn't really follow this when it was popular back in 2011. But E6, and then there are other moves. So apparently Queen B6 is like legitimate. This is another Kasparov game from 2002. I'm not sure that this is bad for black. I mean, Queen B6 is a very artificial type of variation. But apparently white can't necessarily sack the pawn. Let's see. Knight D2, Queen takes B2, Rook B1. What's the deal with this? It's only one game by Zweigensev. So the engine actually thinks this is good for black. Interesting. Not everybody's... This is not everybody's cup of tea. But not trusted by the computer. I wouldn't play something like that with black unless I knew for sure what I was doing. E6 is more principled. Now you play Knight D2. And obviously if you played Knight F3 or something, you would transpose back into the short type of variations. Yeah, like, you have to put the knight on B3 if you play Knight D2 first. You want to play Bishop B3. So now, I mean, I don't know. You know, I thought Knight E7 was the main line. But apparently it's not. Like, this is way far more common. Having played this like once or twice in a blitz game with white, though, I realize, looking at it from white's side, the problem. You know, I mean, this break is really annoying. Of course, white has Bishop B5 in a lot of variations. Black can't just do C5 in any position. I know there's like Knight F3, C5. So how would this work, for example? How come people got away with this with black? You can just play C5 right away. What's up with 97? If c5 were good here, like, why don't more people play it? There must be a problem with it. Oh. So there's only one game where someone played c4. Apparently, this is the best move. Nesterovich. I mean, it looks scary for black. Black's king is going to be in the center longer than white's, and it looks like the center is getting blasted open. I would be very scared with black here. It's strange that there's no games, though. I mean, the main idea of 97 is to support c5, so... Let's see what the engine says. It likes 97 a little bit better. But anyway, I mean, we expect you to play like either knight b3 or knight f3. So I go here, and he goes h4. And I was like, well, that's not a move I remember ever being played. So I figured rightly that this was something Morales had invented. It doesn't look necessarily good for white, but it's interesting innovation. I think we said, like in my stream, that there were a couple games on Lee Chess. Oh, Morales is saying if knight d7, you play g4. Zvagintsev, yeah, that's a lot of Zvagintsev. Didn't we have a game like this? Yeah, see? I lost to this too, remember? This is where you did f4, f5. I didn't remember the move order. What's funny that I don't know why I played knight d7 against you in the other game. That was back in March. He's beaten me twice now. Huh. Is that all? So h4? And here I wasn't sure what I should do, because you have to consider h6. But I thought allowing g4, it just seems like better. This seems to help you. I don't see why I want to allow that. So h5, and then, I mean, this is a weird move, bishop e2. And I looked at this pretty extensively with one of my other students this week. It looks like it's just not a good system for white. Who was that I looked at with was it with Move 11? Or someone else? It was with Move 11. So, bishop e2, yeah, it looks artificial, like most variations. I wanted to sack the pawn, but I just talked myself out of it. I wasn't sure how it would work. So ultimately, I should just go c5, right? And then if you try to... I thought you could try to take it, but it looks good for black. Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't think you should repeat this variation. I mean, it might work in practical games, but I mean, this actually looks quite strong for black. I think c5 it's basically like a refutation. The engine is still claiming a very tiny edge for white. I don't remember that. I don't think it like thinks the white's better if you let it run this. Maybe I'm supposed to play knight d7 first? Did I get it wrong? Okay, I'm supposed to play knight d7 first. Knight d7 first. If you take the pawn, then I have very strong counterplay. Now it's really good. So you're not supposed to take the pawn for sure. You have to bail out back into some kind of normal Actually, it's never going to be normal because you're playing a h4 in the short variation. But it's interesting this has never been played. We can look at the opening explorer on Lichess. Knight b3, this is, sorry, here. So knight d7 is the correct move. There's a handful of games here. But if bishop takes h5, c5, and black is good. So you have to find another move, and f3 is, don't think so. Yeah, the computer thinks knight f3. I mean, this makes sense. I mean, you're developing your pieces. If you insist on playing this variation, I think you should play knight f3 here. If you insist on playing this, really. And if I have to play f6, okay. This is a really weakening move for black, but common in the variation. So bishop g6, of course, was a mistake. And now Morales, all he has to do is follow the opening explorer, and he's in a good position. You have your own weird ideas, yeah. Knight h3. He doesn't follow Grandmaster games, he just follows the Lichess opening explorer. Knight h3. Beep beep, I'm a Jeep 9-7. That's not the I am. I mean, now the threat of knight f4. I don't know what else I'm going to do. What am I going to do about knight f4? You could play c5 maybe. To be honest, like, in retrospect, I like that my knight is like protecting my bishop. Maybe I would think like c5 effectively would be better than what I did. Because after this is a problem. I don't have any threats, and it just seems like you have a good position now. You know, ultimately, it looks like ultimately, like, the next move is really a mistake, but what the heck am I going to do? Like, bishop h7? Can I play bishop h7? Like, there's no way that's a move. Yeah, I'm already in a lot of trouble very quickly here. I would love to play this move, but it's just this primitive bishop takes h5 threatening this. There's like no way to deal with that. g6 loses, and this is embarrassing. So I can't protect e6. I'm in big trouble after knight f5 already. So yeah, c5 was a move. c5 is my best chance. It's more natural. And the computer actually thinks you should play c3, which I bet you would do that. Knowing you and the way you play these type of positions, I could see you playing c3. You like c3. Maintaining your pawn center. Alright. So that seems like the best. Here is a mistake, knight f4, and then this is a further mistake, but I don't think I had anything better. And apparently, like, this was an inaccuracy, g3. You had some crazy stuff here. I think you even have rook takes h4 we looked at. Yeah. Yeah, no, we saw that. There's a crazy variation with rook takes h4. I'm surprised you didn't have that in your home analysis. Like the rook a4 thing you did to me in the Scandinavian. I don't know, your home analysis is really slacking, man. You should have had this like in the notebook. Rook takes h4, not a move like most people could possibly conceive of. I mean, conceive of maybe, but to be sure about it. The computer thinks this is one of White's best moves. One of them, but g3 apparently isn't an accuracy. Still, White has a huge advantage. Yeah, so you could play knight takes g6 and have an advantage here as well. But this is good. Now bishop takes h5 is this game. And the guy should have taken with the knight, apparently, threatening knight f6 check. I mean, obviously that's an issue. I think there's some exchange sack or something. We found something crazy here. g6, some queen sack, knight f6, queen f6, ef6, rook h1 check, knight f1. A typical convenient Morales move. And black doesn't have enough compensation for the queen. Now you can watch without video or sound. How about that? G-Sounds is he's watching without video or sound. He's watching telepathically from now on. You know what I love? People who really focus on the important things. There was this guy who told me that I should wash my hair on one of my YouTube videos. Or the guy that's like talking about my t-shirts. You know what your problem is? You're missing the fucking point of the chess video. You know? Anyway, just wanted to get that off my chest. Bishop takes h5. Bishop takes h5. Wasn't the best move, apparently. This is better. This is hard to see, though. Knight g6, you're not like winning a pawn or anything. This is actually a pawn sacrifice. White is down a pawn. Well, was he trying? No, he was criticizing me for my camera settings. And when he's not doing that, he's criticizing me for the audio problems. And it's getting on my nerves. And I'm just like, dude, go away. You know what? You're missing the point. Because you focus on everything but the point, which is to learn chess. I think if you have a problem focusing on the point, then you probably have like ADD or something, honestly. You got to ask yourself, why do you keep like not focusing on the point, which is we're here to analyze chess. Not commentate whether my t-shirt is bad, or if I need to wash my hair, or if the, you know, you need to focus, learn to focus. We're here to learn chess. Alright. This is hard to find, though. I probably would have played it like you played it. And I knew that this wasn't that great for me. And I know that Queen G5 is pretty artificial, and I wasn't optimistic for black. But as always, I had some hope that Morales wouldn't kill me with perfect technique. Now here, all of my hopes were based on Rook H6. This was like my big thing. You know, interesting thing is that if you think about this position, it's mostly strategy, not tactics. So Morales has the worst pawn structure, but he's got better development, and he'll ultimately have a safer king because he's going to get out of the center faster. But I think the defining thing is this pressure at the base of my pawn chain. Like I have you have a weak G pawn, and maybe your E pawn and your G pawn are attackable, and I have a more holistically good pawn chain. But the point is, like, this pressure at f7, what am I going to do about this f7? I have no good way to protect the base of my pawn. I have no good way to protect the base of my pawn structure at f7. If I move my king, I lose f7, and that's how I lost the game. Now, the only chance was f6, and I didn't manage to find it. So rook h6, guarding against losing the exchange. You castled queenside. I played knight d7, and theoretically I can castle queenside, but f7 is hanging. And with the loss of f7, we like see a new base at e6. So here the problem is like, okay, you played king b1. Now maybe that was a mistake. I can't remember now. I thought that move 11 and I found something better. Oh, you consider king e2 instead of long castle. I mean, that's really obviously obviously a viable thing to do, because it's an endgame. I mean, we could have an endgame where the queens get exchanged. Your king would be in the center if the queens get exchanged. If this is a big if. I mean, you do have to kind of consider stuff like this, like what's going to happen if I attack c2 and trade queens, for example, like take. I mean, say this happened, this would probably be okay for black, wouldn't it? I mean, maybe you're better. I don't know. Your king's in the center. You have c4, but I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's good that you considered queen e2, but it's hard. It's hard, king e2, it's hard to, with the queens on the board, and you can't force an exchange of queens, it's hard to justify not castling. But here, after knight d7, did you have something better? Was it like, rook f1? Or what? Knight f6 is still on. Did you have rook f1 or something? I don't remember what it was. Let's see. Yeah. But also g4. I'm not quite sure I understand exactly what g4 does. It just grabs some space, I guess. It stops queen f5. I don't know. Yeah, I saw this, the computer looking at this Caro-Kann move, which would provoke you to like weaken your light squares. Ivanchuk would play bishop b4. But I mean, ultimately I can't solve my problem. I have to play f6, which is going to weaken my structure. So after you castled, I play knight d7. King b1 was too cautious. Oh, you should just take. Okay. But not here. I'm talking about this position. You're supposed to play rook f1 or g4. So castles queenside. Oh, you mean here you should just take. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I expected you to take. I thought I could take on e3, but I mean, when I looked at the position, I thought this, because of this is loose and this is weak, and your h5 knight is kind of loose. I thought I'd have something. Maybe you could just play like knight b3 or something, and everything is solid. Ultimately, the game hinges on e6. Computer says knight f3. Okay. Well, that's another way of reinforcing this. And there's not a lot black can really do. I'm pretty tied up here. It's just not a good position structurally, because I lost the base of my pawn chain at f7. You're saying knight f4? Not here, though. Yeah. Knight f4 would drop a piece, right? Alright. So you played this move. e4 was weird. And it doesn't, it doesn't really threaten anything. I mean, I'm not really concerned about this. Pawn takes pawn, c takes. I mean, I guess if you had like a free move, if you had another free move, maybe you could play c4 later, but my d5 is pretty solid, so it seemed to me like you're hoping I take or something, but I didn't appreciate how how bad my situation really is here. And plus you're getting the pawn out of take. Getting rid of the weakness. Well, yeah, I mean, there's just no pawn to take on e3 anymore. So here I just was low on time. I mean, you're also low on time, but it's not as significant as my time problem. So I just made a routine move, and it's terrible. So what was it that I could do here? Bishop b4 or something? Bishop b4 or f6? f6. Yeah, apparently it's not that bad for me. To be honest, I don't know what I was thinking. I just wasn't thinking. I think I just blundered. It was just simply a blunder. I just played king b8. It was like an easy move. Let's just play king b8. The king is safe there. I basically like forgot that you're threatening queen takes f7 because it's a simul game and I don't have time. But after this, it's just I'm lost. Like I'm just lost. I mean, this pawn is it's impossible to protect e6. So I can resign. I can like resign now. But honestly, I made the worst possible move here, trading queens. First of all, I'm down a pawn, so I shouldn't be trading queens, being down a pawn. It's really idiotic. I mean, there must be something I can do. Maybe queen g4? Because this is under pressure, this is under pressure. I'm on pawns. Wow. Plus 3.4. But it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm like lost here. But trading queens is insta-loss because it's the second pawn. The base of my pawn chain goes and I'm down 2 pawns. There's really nothing to see after this. I should have generally resigned. But once we got to this position, I thought I could harass you, but you found a really nice way to stop all my counterplay. And then, honestly, I'm trying to avoid exchanges and blockade. e6, it's impossible. I mean, I'm down 2 pawns here. But it was amusing how you forced an exchange of rooks. And then another pawn goes. So that was like a perfect final position. Okay, Mule Skinner is up next. Yeah, we've got a new streamers battle. Hey y'all, we're doing away with blogs because they're annoying. Oh man, that's not the message. God damn it. Hey y'all. We're getting rid of blogs. Good news. Hey, no mini feeds. Guys, don't forget, support our efforts to go to the World Senior. And then new chair. What the hell is that? What is that? Notifications? What? Support my efforts to have a new chair. Notification pop-ups disabled by browser saying, dude, this has been that way forever. Why is it sending me that message now? Alright, Mule Skinner. Holy shit, what just happened? That was a huge, loud... I left the sound on. That used to annoy Arsenal fan. Remember that? I had to disable sounds because event sounds bothered him. Thanks for analyzing the game. Oh, the least I can do is analyze my own losses. It's always a pleasure. Antonio Morales tipped $5. So we're up to $12.49.99. $12.49.99. Now, a special offer for $12.49.99. Where's Mule Skinner? Okay, so this is a game for analysis. 90 plus 30, game for my weekend tournament in Denmark. A draw would be enough to ensure not 11th, but first prize. A draw ensures first prize. So this is this is an individual tournament. Over the board, Mule Skinner playing white. I don't know why I didn't put this in here. Copy. Analysis board. Paste. Thanks, Antonio, for $5 donation. Budapest Computer Gaming Chair Builder. It's either too hot or too cold in here. Wow, okay, that's the final position. Mule Skinner is black. A draw would be enough for first place. Wait a minute. Mule Skinner, are you black or white here? You can't be white. It's a King's Indian attack. You must have been black, right? Round robin, 6 players. Okay, 5 rounds, 6 players. 1 single round robin. But you're black, correct? A draw would be enough for first place. Can I turn off that stupid thing on the left that shows Raymond Keane, Gary Kasparov, bats for chess openings too? Man, that's almost annoying as blogs. Can we turn that off somehow? Good thing you guys don't have to see that on the screen. That's really irritating. Alright, knight f3, d5. We're playing black here. But honestly, the thing is that Mule Skinner plays the French. You know, so I kind of get the d5. But, you know, you're an e4 player at the same time. You would have to consider playing e6 and hoping they go e4 and go into a French rather than playing d5. I'm not sure what the benefits of this are. It's a little more flexible than playing d5. It also depends on what you're planning on playing against d4, which is really important. You play the Benko sometimes. There's a high chance like you're not going to get a Benko with knight f3 move order for sure. Knight f3 is the most annoying move without a question to face. But I think you should consider move orders with knight f6 and e6. d5 is very committal, you know. Now you happen to get a King's Indian attack where it becomes French and you got a type of line, you know, but that's not necessarily the case where you could play a lot of things. I just think you should think about your options. But anyways, all right. Because to me it feels like you're playing d4 with white. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that e4 players are necessarily well suited to play this way with black. And, you know, if he plays like d4 or something, you know, you're lucky he plays the King's Indian attack, because that's something that it's like a French. You know, obviously there are other options here. You can play b6 maybe. Bishop e7. Your knight is committed to f6. That's one thing I don't like. And that's not a bad idea. Another option would be to advocate the c6 again, because on bishop g2 you can play c5, and then on a proper King's Indian attack we'll do this move order. And I'm sure we've talked about this before. But I think there's something to be said for the Botvinnik type of setup against the King's Indian attack. This is what John Watson recommended in Play the French. You know, I mean, I like that better. But whatever. I mean, it's fine. I mean, this line is well known. I saw this one guy playing like b5. I got the Lichess database turned on. Yeah, for some reason b5 is not supposed to be so good here. Oh, and I don't really like white's move order, but whatever. Okay, d3. This is the standard position now, and then you play b5. So b6 is definitely an alternative. It's funny, white is 0-3 here in a totally standard position. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something about his move order again. Rook e1 was played a little early. He doesn't need Rook e1 to play e4. So now he's like obliged to play e4. You should castle. I don't know if you can like leave your king in the center having played b5. There are even some people who played a5, so but I don't trust it, you know. I mean, it seems like when you do this weird queenside stuff, white's gonna not push e5 but switch up on you and play like c takes d. I mean, the point is, if you try to do crap like this, I would think they take. And if you take with the pawn, white is going to go d4. You know, like Rubinstein. This structure is I think like this type of structure would cast doubt on this like queenside expansion. I don't know if you could take with a knight on d5. This also seems weird. So I would just castle. But again, I mean, pawn takes pawn. Topalov, Caruana. So a bunch of people did play knight takes at this juncture. And then there's all kinds of stuff. c4. a4. Korobov, bishop. Okay, this is playable and interesting. But anyway, he doesn't play e4. Like, this guy has to play e4. There is no other move in this. I mean, I have bad news for white. There, like, is no other move in this position, man. e4 is a must. This is like not really a variation. I mean, I don't know what that is. That's a move, but a3 is just weird. I don't think a3 is a great move. But I think you ought to castle. You're going to have to castle. And I don't know where your bishop is necessarily going to go, you know. It also depends on what white does when he plays e4. a3 is definitely a weird move, and I think you should castle. But you played bishop e7. This is probably not a bad move, but I don't know necessarily if it belongs there or not. e4. Generally speaking, taking isn't good. It does a little bit calm the positions down, though, I find. You know, you don't get such an all or nothing game, but the problem would be like e5, and then later the knight will sink into e4. And he has... I mean, theoretically, exchanging pawns is a mistake. So, most people will do this. Objectively, you're not really supposed to do that. But if you're gonna not do that, then like, why is the bishop on b7? Would it be better to just be like a5, bishop a6? If you're gonna castle kingside, you know, I don't see the point we had to play bishop b7. So if we go here and he plays e4, basically what black needs is like a waiting move till we figure out if white's going to take or push. But that's the quandary, I think. You know, you don't really have a clear waiting move. I mean, what is your waiting move? You know, queen c7, rook b8. Rook b8 sometimes gets hit by bishop f4 later on. But I suppose that it's like reasonable. A5, and they're going to take, probably. And again, I think like this is the point. And white goes for that structure, trying to fix these pawns, and then knight f1, knight e3, like that. But it looks like black is fine. This is an interesting idea. Wow, queen b6, just keeping the tension. Okay, so you know, bishop b7 isn't forced so early. And then white played another, I think, weird move here, man. This guy, Vladimir Sergeyev, I don't know if that's a GM. I mean, basically, if white takes, what happens if you take with the knight? There's no more a4. The siege lost to a 24-73. Nikolai Noritsyn. That's some kind of game in like some Canadian Open or something. But I don't like a3. He loses his a4, so it's nothing special. Well, white shouldn't be worse, but it looks like approximately equal. But if you do this, see, this is where we run into trouble. Again, I think that white has d4. And white ended up winning this game after knight f1, but I mean, that kind of seems a little bit strange, doesn't it? Black was okay. I would think d4 is a strong move. Because you can't really keep the pawn necessarily forever. I mean, if you try to take the pawn gets surrounded and it's gone. So ultimately, like, black has nothing better than keeping attention or pushing. So I guess that would be my point. But castle c3, what is white doing here? He's weakening the d3 point in his position for no particular reason. It doesn't seem good for white. I don't know how this helps him. I mean, he controls d4, but nothing happening with d4. By weakening more squares, he makes it harder for him to go for some sort of all-in kingside attack. Pawn takes d5 is probably not so great anymore. And you just played a5, but I'm not sure if you should do that here or not. Because there's this tension in the center now. It's not a closed position. I still doubt a5 is a bad move. I mean, you could play a lot of moves, clearly, like rook c8, maybe queen c7, maybe queen b6. This type of move, like rook e8, is possible, so the knight can come back here, like in a Slav. Black is okay after d4, c4. Is black okay after d4, c4? Yeah. Yeah, I think so. In this type of structure. He has space on the queen side, but he has this, like... The space on the queen side with this, you know, kind of compensates for the sort of weak pawn on d5. I just remember, like, Rubinstein having some games like this with white. Ultimately, white will play knight f1 and then, like, knight e5. It's a little hard to play. That's why the other game where black played queen b6 was interesting. You know, you could try to keep the tension, I guess. This pawn is a little bit weak. Nevertheless, I don't think a5 is a mistake. This is a horrible move, queen c2. Then your opponent is like a noob, you know, who doesn't really know what he's doing. And there may be some sort of hope chess involved there, but it's like an old Indian. White is just basically doing nothing and like shuffling their pieces around. Isn't white going for e5 push? Well, usually they would, right? But, you know, in that kind of scenario, I don't think you're playing a3 and c3. Normally, Mr. Slow. He's created a lot of weaknesses on the queen side. Well, white doesn't really know what he's doing, I think. Yeah, typically you would not play a3, c3. This is definitely like, all I can think of is hoping for the line to clear. But I don't like Muleskinner's a4. You know, I mean, a4 is obviously not a terrible move, but it's inflexible. I don't know what you should do. I mean, taking doesn't look good either. Ultimately gets access to the e4 square. Pushing is an option that might not be that bad, but another move that's not uber flexible. So I think the black's best option should be something like pushing for c4. Can we play c4? Because this diagonal kind of collapses. I mean, the chain. Ultimately, his pawn chain might collapse. a4 controls b3. Well, I see that. My criticism of a4 is simply that it's just not fluid, you know. I like that your pawns are fluid. You have every kind of option available here. You know, I think there's a lot of strength and flexibility. As I said, I mean, a4 can't be a terrible move, but every pawn move makes you a little bit less flexible. I like having like all of our options open here. I'd love to get like d4, maybe undermining this, and having this b4 advance. c4, d4, undermining the diagonal. That's an option. Or just keeping the tension. You might be able to play just rook c8. There's a game. Thomas Rumpf, like Trump. Rumpf. I know that it's not easy to play rook c8. Your rook might play from a8. You know, you could play queen b6. The idea of rook f c8, for example. It just seems like Muleskinner, you have lots of options here. If we throw it on the engine, what does it say? a4, number one move. Then it comes up with h6, which is a move. It's not easy to play h6. It could weaken your king side, but it does stop knight g5 and fantasies of queen h7. I wouldn't play h6 unless I was sure about it. Generally, you want to not touch things over there on that side. So I don't know. What about c4 though? The engine hates it. c4, d4, d takes e4. So he has the strong pawn now. d takes e4, knight takes e4, and white is slightly better. Well, c4 also is inflexible. My preference would be to keep the tension. Yeah, I guess rook c8. I mean, obviously, you can play queen c7. Queen c7 is better than queen c2 any day of the week. Yeah, queen b6 is also okay. To control this. I like that. You know, that seems reasonable to me. Queen b6 with the idea of rook f c8, or maybe rook f d8 and rook a c8. Because you're just going to get on these files. Yeah. I would keep the tension. So after a4, he plays this. No, again, you know, probably knight f1 is not a very good move, but he just weakened like the b3 square. And then he went knight a5. I mean, typically in this type of structure, I wanna get like access to d3. So c4, knight d7, knight c5, knight d3, like a Roy Lopez. But it looks like we're not going to have time for that. And you've got to watch this diagonal. One good thing is, like, after this exchange, he no longer has the knight d2, knight e4, knight g5. His knight in f1 is not getting into e4 here. I mean, I think you could do a lot of things. You could just blast him with like b4. There can literally be nothing wrong with b4. The computer surprisingly says it's equal. I feel like black is better, but maybe not. It's like a Catalan. So you play knight a5 here, and that has to be a mistake. Yeah, knight b3, and you grab his dark square bishop. Boom. And I think that's the minimum. And the good news is now it's like, again, I really like to take back that a pawn to get more flexibility. But anyways, you eliminated a powerful bishop here, and then bishop takes d5. I don't know which way to take. I mean, maybe you should take with the knight. Knight takes is the most natural recapture. I get it, though. You maybe don't like this. Okay, there's some calculation, like c4. You have to defend your bishop now. Probably you can get away with a lot of different moves. Queen c7, rook a7. You know, there are many different options. Bishop takes was safer, but on the downside, he's going to gain a tempo with knight e3. It looks like it's not a big problem. I mean, his knight isn't really like going anywhere from e3. Obviously, bishop b3 is kind of artificial, but I would consider it. It would give you a tempo to do whatever you want, you know. This is going to be a problem, though. So probably you're correct to do this. And then it looks like black can't be worse. I wouldn't say black is better necessarily. Rook d1. I mean, the pawns are kind of fixed. So if he plays like d4, ultimately, it feels like you really need to get this break in with b4. Can you do it? Why don't you do it? You did it on the next move. So where are we now? Bishop b7, rook cd1, and now you played queen c7. So do it right away. Queen c7 was cautious. I mean, you're anticipating... I would suppose you're anticipating d4 opening up against your queen here. But it's probably not a big deal. Like, you can just take, and if he takes, you're just, you know, getting out of the way and basically going to recapture next move. Knight c4. Ooh. So if I take, you're taking, and then you're getting in like knight c4, knight. But again, nothing there yet. This move, okay. Queen c7. White really wants to play d4, I would think, so his pawn isn't backwards. As I always say, like, you never put the queen on c7 in the King's Indian. It should go on e7. So now he plays queen e2, kind of like self-correcting. Getting his queen to the proper King's Indian square, protecting f3, eyeing the b5 pawn. And now you played b4, so... What happened here? Was it a draw? Okay. I wondered why the game ended so quickly. It must have been a draw. b4 makes sense. I mean, you want to break open the dark squares because he has no dark square bishop. I like b4. Yeah, and he doesn't really want to isolate his pawns. If he does this, I think it benefits you. Now, this is way weaker than this is. Now, if he loses b2, you're winning. So he doesn't want to make it easier for him to attack the base of his pawn chain. Knight c4 is okay. And now I don't know what you should do, but this looks pretty good. Keeping the tension and pressurizing c3. So how does he protect the pawn? Yeah. And now rook c1. And if anybody's better here, I gotta take the bishop. But he can block you. You know, if you play bishop f6, The problem is he can stick his knight on e5 and nullify this pressure here. So ultimately, it looks hard to make progress. I mean, I think a draw is a reasonable result here. After rook c1, you play b3. I don't know about b3. I don't really like b3. I think with the bishops, you should keep the pawn structure, keep the pawn structure fluid. I mean, make this a weakness, like a permanent weakness. If you take on c3, it's not like he's going to have to babysit that pawn and that pawn. I mean, I feel like his pawns are worse. He has essentially like 3 weak pawns, and you have 2. I think you're making a mistake by playing b3. Ultimately, I mean, now it's like his pawns are more stable, and everybody's pawns are more stable. Yeah, no, I think a draw is okay after b3, but I think b3 is really the wrong idea. You're the one with the upper hand, I think, here. The computer finally agrees with me about something. But a draw is okay. It's a reasonable position to agree to a draw. It's after b3 especially, it's like really blocked. I don't think you should play b3. Okay. Yeah, I mean, white didn't really seem to have a handle on that opening, but you didn't play optimally either. I just don't like a4. It's really inflexible. But again, it wasn't that bad. All right. Going back, we're only on game 3, man. We got a lot of games to cover here. Mr. Slow is up next. I'm going to be back in 1 second, guys. Just a 2-minute bathroom break. And move 11 just tipped 1667. 1667. Was that a good year? Thank you, move 11. Welcome, everybody. Mitch Sport, hello. Favored hater. And I use 10 minerals of syrup have followed. I'll be right back. We are back. The Kraken. Release the Kraken. Mr. Coffee's not here tonight. I think he had something. Something was up. Very Deutsch. Deutsch. Do the Danish speak Deutsch? Deutschish. Oh, there's a Kraken. Mr. Slow put a Kraken in. We're up to 12, 66, 66. He just wanted to make it 66, 66, I guess. Alright. We're on to Mr. Slow's game. Ow. Alright. Onward and upward. A lot of games tonight. Thanks again to Move 11. Move 11 did submit a game for tonight. Nice of Move 11 to join us. Alright, game 4. Mr. Slow. Thank God it's not a game against me. Someone submitted a game that's not against me. Young Gun versus Mr. Slow. Alright, we're playing black. It's no Kraken. Guys, don't forget the Kraken, okay? Our Kraken, I've created the Kraken. Started to make YouTube videos, including a game against Mr. Slow. C5. Wow. So, is this recent? This is new? Mr. Slow, you played so many games with Bishop E5 against me. You know, I would think like you would know better than to do this. This is my main thing against the Rossalimo, and I know how it's not that great. It's I just got bit by a mosquito. It seems like the main problem with this system for black is really if the opponent knows it's coming, it really loses any kind of value. You definitely don't want to be like known for playing this, in my experience, because then like the D4 players start playing the Rossalimo against you. That's what started happening to me. Like everyone. It's from the last weekend. Okay, round 2. Well, you've certainly played enough games with white against me to know what you're doing here. So white castled, and you played Bishop D7, which is correct. Bishop D7 is basically the move in almost every variation. I think the only exception is C3. It's good to know, though, if white plays C3, you're supposed to play knight F6. That's important. So after castles, Bishop D7, preventing the double pawns, Rook E1, and now Mr. Slow played A6. This is a risky move, man. I feel like there was a game... I feel like it was a game on my stream where someone was using a computer like 5 years ago. I eventually put the game on YouTube or something. That one of those early trolls who was like pretending to be a girl, they just crushed me in this line. Maybe it was a different position, but I thought it was this one. Like bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4. Let's say knight f6, knight c3, e6. There was some kind of knight d5. But I don't think it was this. It was something very similar to this, where I absolutely got blown away by like perfect computer play. So a6, yeah, my only fear with this move is the take. You know, this is interesting. This is played sometimes in the other variation. That's like plausible. But I don't think it's anything special. So your opponent played bishop f1, yeah, and this is the only thing I'm afraid of here. Bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4. Yeah, so here it's interesting. Rook c8 is the engine move. Man, bishop d7. You have to have 9 lives like a cat to play this position, man. I'm just waiting for knight d5 and then I resign. Anand Nakamura. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, what's the advantage of playing a6 versus the normal move? But you're lucky that he played bishop f1. So now you have additional possibility of bishop g4. I don't know how good that is, but it's definitely a legit possibility. Now this is going to transpose. Now you've transposed back into the normal line with knight f6 c3, and now Mr. Slow plays. Oh, how many times have I played this? Bishop g4, and white plays d4. So there's several different variations. d3, h3. What else? d4. That's about it. That's it. 3 lines. They're all very different though. He plays the sharpest, I guess, d4. And so now you have to do this. Take. And now here you went on a new path that I'm not familiar with. I've tried both d5 and e5. My latest games were with e5. And we must have had this. No, let's see. Player. Sparkle Horses Black. Move 11, move 11, move 11. God. Hey, it's Miro. Hey, it's Miro. Hey, it's Miro. Hey, it's Miro. So not against you, just specifically against those 2 others. Mr. Slow didn't actually go into this line with white ever against me. And I played d5, although maybe not recently. I have a game from 2016 here. But, you know, there's some sharp, very sharp play after this. That's possible as well. So I honestly don't know which one of those was better, but this is the first I've seen. I feel like this is the first I've seen bishop takes f3. And they could, I think they have to take with the pawn. Wow. Alright, so now let's see the database. So this has been played by Jeff the Mystery Zhang. That's probably a chess.com bullet game or something. That guy does, I don't understand that guy. It's so weird. You're like 2700 and you don't play chess. I don't really get it, man. He must be independently wealthy. Shirov Kunin draw. Well, I don't know, Mr. Slow. I mean, there's a lot of games here. Nodirbek against Matlikov, draw, 2018. Hans versus, Jeff Zhang has played both sides with bullet games on the Evil Chess site. We can't be playing too scared money. Be afraid of Ross Limo. Steg, man. If you do face the Ross Limo, you at least have to have like 2 variations, because I've reached the point where like people who don't even play the Ross Limo play the Ross Limo against me because they know I'm going to play this line with black. You can't be predictable. You have to actually have at least more than one line. I mean, everybody knows I'm going to play this variation, so they started to all play it. You know, it's like ridiculous. So Mr. Slow's trying something new here. G6. Turov versus, I lost to Turov. Elon Schwartz, November 9er, an old friend of mine. Occasionally plays chess still. He's got a game there from 2021 he lost. Alright, no scan name for Elon. G6. So what's the problem here? Are we getting blown away by some kind of advance? The advance variation. F4, E5, D5. I'm looking at various like pawn moves. I don't think the knight A5 sideline counts as a variation. I was sitting next to Mark Quinn once when he played that at a tournament in Spain. Yeah, it's funny to play in Blitz, but I wouldn't play it in a serious... Knight b8, you might want to give it a try. I haven't had good results Knight a5 in Blitz. So here White plays Bishop e3, but I mean, okay, let's see what happens on d5. d5, Knight a7. I am not playing Knight a7 again. Knight e5 looks like you're asking for trouble, and Knight b8. White seems to be better here. It's a pretty unpleasant position for Black, let's just say that, but it's playable. Yeah, I wouldn't repeat this. So Mr. Soul, I don't know, man. At the end of the day, I think the last I checked, the d5 was the best. But can we investigate one other possibility? Is it possible to combine everything and play g6? It's probably just as bad, just a different version of it. The engine likes this better than taking right away, though. g6, bishop e3, bishop g7. I mean, I think the moral of the story is, like, why exchange unprovoked? You know, maybe if we can get him to play, like, h3, he'll waste the tempo. As usual, it doesn't seem right to exchange unprovoked. Bishop takes f3, g takes f3, okay. Bishop e3, too hesitant. Now, do we have d5 or e5, some kind of central move? I mean, the fact this rook is blocked now. Can we try this? Are we going to get overwhelmed on the white squares? I'm not really that scared of e5, to be honest. We do have to watch this type of stuff. If we could lock the structure, we'd probably be okay. It's like an Alyakin's defense. Although I don't like a6 and like the fact that our c5 and b6 are weak. The other possibility obviously is e5. There's a game here. Daniel Kopolov. Alright. d5, knight e7. That's horrible. Where's your knight going to go from e7? You guys know I love this. It's just... Wow, Catronius game from 1992. I did this against Tonat Min in a very similar position. And I've had several games with... You know, I'm absolutely not afraid of doing this, but Hayes Mira had some games where this might be strong. Apparently this is not enough. Takes... Rook takes e5 check, bishop e7. Black is okay. You can never be too careful, though. Queen takes d4, bishop g7. I feel like this happened in one of my games. e5, d5, and then, man, where's that game? Where's the game? I want to see the game. e5, no. I was in the other variation. Knight e4, bishop d4. Here. So Catronius played f4, and that's best. Wow. Black was really lucky not to lose here. f4 is super strong. This is super strong. I don't know how Black survived. But I mean, this is bad for sure for Black. But I'm not certain that e5 is necessarily like, or d5 is necessarily the best move. What else can we do? I guess we have to. Queen b3. Apparently Black's in big trouble, not surprisingly. Alright, bishop g7 was the game. And now knight c3. Peter Doroshenko versus Ilya Nizhnik, 2007. Things were a little different back in 2007. The world order was a little different, and Ilya Nizhnik wasn't like 2700. Knight c3. So castles. Mr. Slow is just like, chill. And now queen d2. Basically, white refused to do anything committal whatsoever. Eventually, Mr. Slow is going to lay claim to some kind of control of the center. I would go with e5 right away. I would think this is the perfect time to do it. I don't know. Why not e5 here? This actually looks really strong now. Because my only fear would be a weaker player might trade queens or something. But I mean, that's the least of our worries. This looks really pretty good. Let's say e5, d5, knight d4. I mean, now it's a totally different situation. You've got the queen on d2 and knight f3 check, so he's got issues. This is a really good pawn sack, obviously. White is maybe lost or close to lost in this position because of the blockade on the dark squares. So I feel like Mr. Slow, I definitely don't know why we're playing b5 here. This honestly looks fine. I think he should probably take. If I was the young gun. Yeah, computer agrees. Your only fear is a trade of queens here, but I think you're never going to lose. You shouldn't lose. I mean, you're definitely not worse, really. But I guess with b5, the only advantage of that is avoiding exchanges. Young Ilya Nizhnik played knight h5. Also not committal, but b5, I don't love it. And now this move, that is a weird move. That's just too much, man. I mean, what are we going to do? Knight c1, knight d3. He's rolling into a little ball. You expect to find your opponent under the table, huddled there, having a panic attack. What's wrong? What's wrong? Oh, I'm just afraid of ghosts. There's a ghost that's going to get me. What is he doing? Seriously, knight e2? I bet Hayes Miro wouldn't play that. This is not the picture of coordination. I could see knight c1, knight d3 being a maneuver. He must have been just intimidated. And now the very restrained e6. Mr. Slow has time to put his pawns on dark squares. Very, very luxurious move, e6. Absolutely no rush. And then this. Yeah, I don't think white really knows what he's doing. Or he's just too safe a player or something. I don't know. He's not playing like most of my opponents who are trying to blow my head off. You think he wants to play d5 and I mean, I just feel like you have a good game. He just didn't try to blow your head off when he was supposed to, and now he's just sitting there with a bad pawn structure and no attack. You've played like you had all the time in the world, and he's not caused you any inconvenience. Now you played d5. Okay, there's a support point here. So even after white's hesitant play, I still think his position is probably okay. It's like an Alyakin or something. Bishop g7, he trades off your good bishop. King g7, and then e5, and now knight h5. He's got f4. But this is an Alyakin's defense now. You've got the queen h4, f6 break whenever you want it. His bishop is really not doing anything. It's not clear if it'll ever do anything. If his best hope is bishop h3, bishop g4, bishop takes h5 for that bishop, I mean, yeah, I'm not liking his knight's mobility, but even this isn't possible. Maybe you can go to b3 and c5. But again, you're in there. Knight b3. f6 is going to be a little tricky because of this and the c-file counterplay. I mean, I'm not sure, Feels good for black. I would rather be black, but he has some counterplay. I really don't like white's play in this game. I have no issues with the way you played it, other than maybe like the g6 wasn't great, but who am I to say? There is no big answer here. I just think his play was strange and very slow. It's almost like he's too safe. Rook c8 for you. Yeah, I don't know what else to suggest, actually. But, like, where is his knight going to go now? Is it going to go to c1? No. d4? No. f4 and trade pieces? A rook c5. He said this was his death. Oh, no. He just allowed that straight up? The support point. I was hoping to get a knight to c5. Yeah. f4. If he reinforces e5, then he could theoretically put his rook on c5. Wow, this is like a really bad blunder. Rook there. Knight takes e5. Whoops. Is that a problem? It's not enough that his kingside structure is like broken, but now knight takes e5. That was a horrible tactical mistake. Bishop g2, rook c5. Mr. Slow decided to just end the c-file now, at the cost of allowing a passed pawn, possibly a protected passed pawn. But you've got a very good blockade on c6, and I think this is a good decision. I mean, I would probably play knight c6, but then your opponent can play knight to d4, I guess. So you're hoping for some other tactical trick, I guess. Queen f6. No rush. You're also attacking f3. We expect knight d4. Then you have knight f4, and that's what happened. And now there's the crushing threat of queen g5, which is an atrocity. It's hard to suggest a move now, because you're threatening queen g5. So he plays bishop f1. So now he can go king h1 in response to... If only your queen could jump over the knight to take this. Mr. Slow has a nice little trick here. Double attack. And then it's like pin it and win it. Takes, and another pawn. And that's easy. No counterplay. Yeah, I imagine you didn't like this. And you didn't want to hang your A pawn with b4. Well, I mean, this is just as good as a protected pass pawn on d5. You're going to play e5 later anyway, so it's over. b4, and he hung a rook. Yeah, one last trick. If you take, he has queen b2 check. So he was counting on that, but queen g5 check wins a rook. Okay, easy game. Easy game for Mr. Slow. Unfortunately, first of all, I mean, you never really want to play an opening against someone who plays it themselves. If Mr. Young Gun prepared for the game but didn't realize that Mr. Slow plays the Raslimo himself with white, it's a typical mistake that I've made a lot. People who play an opening, from the other side are gonna see it better, I think. But secondly, white's play was just really weak. Yeah, but I mean, it's worth looking into that line more. I'm thinking about knight f6, trying to play this, but it's a bit of a more solid option. I feel like everyone plays g6 and e6 and D6 is like the third, but this move at least isn't quite as well studied as the others. All right. Thank you, Mr. Slow. Astrobate with the donation. What'd you do now? You got us up to what? 444. 444, 1271, 10. How did you come up with that? 444. Astrobate. Thank you for the donation. Oh no, it's Astrobate's game. It's only game 5. The Paleface attack. That's politically correct. When is that even from? Alright. Where do they get the name Paleface attack? It's like someone played this against like Native Americans, and Native Americans refer to it as the Paleface attack? Huh. That's interesting. I wonder if maybe the settlers brought chess with them, in 1492, and then they taught the Native Americans to play chess, and then the Native Americans called this the Paleface attack. I really don't understand. But Astrobate is black, and or maybe Paleface is just like when you're seeing a ghost or something. D4, Knight F6, F3. It's a horrible move. It is indeed. But unfortunately, I think in order to knock him down, you have to set him up first. So, the secret here, Astrobate's on the right track. You're on the right track, but I'm sure this is a good move. But obviously D5, and he keeps this diagonal somewhat closed. Now, you could imagine black could do anything here. I wouldn't put it past Astrobate to play like C4 or Rockport or a lot of people. This is like not... I don't know what this is, man. It looks like it's losing a pawn, but... Knight takes c4, pawn takes c4, queen h4 check. Probably not sound. Needless to say, c5, d5, what does black do? e6? e6 is the best. Are we going to transpose? We're going to transpose to a Benoni after c4. You could get a form of Blumenfeld type of position here with b5. But my point is, it's better to play d5 first, then play c5. Of course, there's some problems. It looks like g4 is a move. I'm not sweating that too much. There's the Black Redeemer. So people are going to play a form of Black Redeemer here. That's all. I guess you could try something interesting. c5 looks interesting. Red Lotus versus Enjoy the Silence. Equal, according to the engine. But black doesn't have the advantage. It's interesting. No, I don't know. I think that this is good. This is a bad... c5 is really strong here. White doesn't have a good move. His best move is like c3 or something. Now I would imagine c4, c5. Now we're talking. Chrysler Daimler. Mr. Scion just donated. We're up to 1280. Yeah, he's got the obsessive compulsive, making it even again. 1280. Mr. Slow donated 890. So we got 890, 444, and 1667. Thank you guys. Bringing it up to 1280. That's higher than my first chess rating of 1275 now. So Astrobate, the point is you have to set him up before you can knock him down. you've got to fix his pawn on d4 and then tear him apart with c5. The problem with your approach is after c5, white can push, and now you can't open it up. So you're just like stuck playing a Benoni. Luckily, your opponent has no literal clue what he's doing. So he's played f3, and you're threatening to rip open the position, and he just doesn't care and plays bishop g5. Well, alright. Now, obviously, we take on d4. Asterbate is paying attention. It's the most principled game I've seen him play all day. C takes d5, hoping for e3 when we pick up a bishop with queen a5 check. That's probably the only way to win a piece in this position immediately. What else can we do? Well, he's got to recapture. How could this guy not recapture on d4? Alright, so he takes on f6. Now check out the dark squares. We should do like a YouTube short video of this game. I can't emphasize enough, really, how important it is to look at the chessboard in terms of color complex, which a lot of people, it's the third thing you learn. First you learn to appreciate the pieces, then you learn to appreciate and look at the board in terms of the squares, and then finally you learn to look at the board and appreciate in terms of the color of the squares. He's missing the dark square bishop, so he has no ability to control the dark squares as well as you. The real question is which way to take. There is an in-between move here, queen a5 check, but I don't see any particular. This is also dangerous because white could do like b4, queen b4, c3. You'd have to calculate this. Not to mention bishop takes g7. So there's no reason to be fancy here. You should recapture with the g-pawn. That's what he did. This is also okay. I think that black still has an advantage after e takes f, but it's not nearly as good because your pawn structure is inferior. This keeps the pawns in one big, or rather in one bigger island in the middle. I'd rather have an isolated h-pawn than a central isolated pawn. Queen takes d4, and now knight c6, queen d1. Where should white place the queen now? Acerbate's opponent's favorites is usually, they tend to put the queen on c3 so they get skewered by bishop b4. I see a lot of that, but objectively white, if I were white here, I would make a sensible move. I mean, queen d2 seems sensible. Trying to get a little bit of control of the dark squares. I mean, maybe queen a4, but this is like nothing's protecting these squares. I mean, at least if you go here, you have a semblance, right? You have like a semblance of control over the dark squares, which white desperately needs. He could play like e3, c3, probably not c3. He needs a place to put his knight, but e3 and have some dark square control. Queen d1 does nothing. Now this is fatally weak. Bishop h6, immediately he zones in on that. It's a typical idea. It's a motif in the Trompowsky. This is essentially a Trompowsky now. White played bishop g5 and bishop takes f6, and that's basically transposing to a form of Trompowsky where white made the obscene move f3 subsequently. Outlier. Welcome to the stream. e4. So as I was saying, white needed to have some dark square control, and he has none. So now it's just total domination on the dark squares. Here, not good. So as we've seen, Asterbate has a tendency to move the pieces too close to enemy position. Bishops, rooks, knights. This is not this is not necessary. It's not even threatening anything, and it's like a loss of time. The bishop is good from its distant position. You should increase your development here. Yeah, definitely identifying that weak point there. So this. Notice, like, if White had played the queen to d2, he would have prevented bishop h6 and made it possible to defend b2 laterally by moving this pawn up. That's what I'm talking about. You know, being aware of the weaknesses in your position. This is a good example for beginners. Queen d1 here, and now that doesn't help you. You're only like giving him a tempo to get more dark square control with g3 or knight e2. He plays knight h3, and I don't know, you know. Knight h3 is reasonable. Bishop e5, and now, you know, a terrible blunder, obviously. White has to play knight c3 or c3. c3 getting some control. And you've wasted time. Bishop move, bishop move, bishop move. 3 bishop moves to do what? And after c3, f4, you'll be driven back again. You should play d6, trapping your own bishop on e5 next. I'm just kidding. It's not so simple. You have this. So, I'm not sure. Black probably still would be better here, even with the crazy structure. But obviously wasting too much time. Bishop e5, okay, blunder, and then c4, and this is crazy. Totally losing it, and it's game over. Now we're winning a piece. Obviously knight d2 is looking like the only option. Unfortunately, he put his knight on a3. Instead of losing the exchange, he loses a whole knight. So queen a5 check, king f2, bishop a1, and now a whole knight and a rook. Well, a knight and the exchange, basically. You should just consider taking here on a3. I think you should just take the knight. Now this doesn't win because White has bishop e2. I mean, it wins, but you're not benefiting. You should just take his knight. You don't have a forced mate here. He overlooked bishop e2, and then you passed up a chance to win an extra piece. You're only fortunate that he played king g3, and it's a cute mate. Is it forced mate? I can't believe you didn't play rook g8 check. This is a really nice mate after queen h6. So I suppose you saw he can play knight g5 here. When I didn't see a forced mate, rook takes g5 check, king h4. It's hard to believe there's no forced mate. I mean, there has to be a forced mate. Oh yeah, this is beautiful. Wow, rook h5. That's so good, man. You missed this. That would have been elegant. But it's shit, it's still not mate. Damn, he goes back to g3. There doesn't seem to be a forced mate. Check here. Does anybody see something? Because I've got g4, king h3. King h3's mate, but this is not. Oh, now we have it. There you go. Alright. So I figured it out. That's cute. Now we have it. Suction nurse. That's a cute mate. Very good. So sadly, Asterbate misses the forced mate. This is mate in 1, mate in 2. This is check, mate in 1. Let's try king h3. I guess that's the best defense ultimately. King h3. And now if d something, Wait has g4. And we've got at least 2 more moves before mate. Anyways, it's not important. Alright, so knight d4. Really bad game by white. This is just for the beginners out there. Alright. Well, I mean, your opponent just wasn't up to your level, Asterbay. He's 1500 provisional. This game will not be remembered in the annals of time. But I do appreciate you submitting it. Mr. Coffee's not here tonight, but this is a game he sent in. This is Ellis Casas versus Grunfeld. Ernst Grunfeld. Eric Ellis Casas versus Ernst Grunfeld. Mr. Coffee submitted this game that was analyzed by Sibeli Tartakover in the classic book 500 Games of Master Chess. Or 500 Master Games of Chess, sorry. Which I recommend. You know, it's an old book, but one of the greatest collections of classic games of all time. So, if you need a coffee table chess book to go over, you know, classic chess games, I do recommend that book. And I like Tartakover's annotations for the most part, although it's not like modern computer standard. I think he does a decent job of explaining it. But Mr. Coffee sent me a message. He said, and I quote, this is from the CSR, Czech Soviet Republic, Moravska Ostrava. Ellis Casas versus Ernst Grunfeld. So he said here, the attack was instructed, but I was trying to pinpoint exactly what black did wrong. Where exactly black went wrong? He says 15 or 26. But I'm not sure, and Tartakover didn't really make that clear. Alright, we'll take a look. So, a rare Grandmaster game. Here it is, number 6. So, Ellis Casas is white. What kind of name is Ellis Casas? Eric Ellis Casas. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, Bishop C4. The first chapter, Mr. Coffee hasn't gotten through the first part of the book yet. He's still in the first chapter on the Gioco Piano. Tartakover starts with the most fundamental opening. He goes by opening, and so I still remember that in that book. The Gioco Piano is the first thing. Bishop C5, C3, and this is interesting because Tartakover definitely goes over a game where Alekhine played Queen E7. The main move, of course, and the best move is Knight F6 for black. But Queen E7, Alekhine wins a nice game with the black pieces, I think. But Bishop B6, it might be better than Queen E7. Here we see an example of another chess.com game. Eric Hansen versus Carlsen Magnus. What is that, like bullet chess? Very high level. But overall, it looks like black's score isn't too bad in the top games. Not a lot of high level games though. I mean, you got Yababa versus Sashikaran. Okay, I did notice this. A number of Sashikaran games. He's now faded back in India as not one of the top guys because he's older. But Sashikaran was like number 2 in India. Yeah, it's not really meant to be a database per se. We do what we can do with it though. Yeah. You can't sort the games by, yeah. Yeah, it's not really a chess database. It's more like an opening tree than a chess database bouncing across. They should call itself an opening. It's technically an opening tree, not really a database program. We have to get a separate database to sort the games. But Bishop E6, D4, Queen E7. So now it transposes back. So I guess it doesn't matter ultimately. However, we could take... I mean, this has independent value. This needs to be... This seriously needs to be, like, double-checked. Petang, you played it and lost against Svane. The Czech guy, Platt, there's a bunch of games, but just those two guys are really good here. I don't know about Vishnu. Okay, he's another Indian player, I don't know. But he did beat an IM. So this, how bad is this for black? C takes d4, d6. It doesn't look that clear. Bishop b5 has a great score for white. But it is kind of a weird move in the fact that, like, we're moving it twice. I looked at this. I didn't really draw a conclusion. I mean, white has won almost every single game. But, I mean, mainly because, like, good players don't play this with black. There are some, though. That game is probably online. Garcia and Palermo drew. Pinter Yoshi lost back in 1998. Yoshi played a lot of games with this kind of weird stuff. With d6 early. Well, that's another idea. Okay, so Pinter is doing like that stuff with like d6, which is weird. Another idea against the Italian game. So now we're transposing back into Alyakin variation, castles, and I don't know what you're supposed to play here. So knight f6. I'm going to turn off the engine. Now white plays d5, which seems strange to release the tension. We have a lead in development. It also opens up this diagonal for black. So most players played rook e1. You have to watch the f2. Eric Hansen lost against Carlsen, of course. But, you know, this move does seem a little bit weird. I mean, sometimes you can sack a pawn with d6 as a type of, like, positional sacrifice. Here it's not particularly good, though. I mean, that's one of the reasons for knight d8 could pop back in through here. The problem would be getting the bishop into the game. Getting black's light square bishop in the game won't be so easy if white sacks a pawn with d6. That has never been played. This knight is problematic. It has to come out through like f7 or b7. So I think it's a little bit more of a natural retreat to go back to b8. The pieces come out for black. Knight d7. Maybe knight d7, knight f8, something like that. So that's what Ernst Kasse's opponent. Ernst Grunfeld playing black here from 1933. Bishop d3, d6, and now the idea is, this is a bit weird for me. He played bishop back to d3, and you think like, okay, well white's supporting c4, but in fact he doesn't do that. He plays knight on bd2 with the idea of knight c4, and then black keeps the dark square bishop on the board, which isn't forced at all, but it is a tremendously powerful piece, so this understandably makes sense. a6, and then knight c4, and then there's only one game where this occurred again. In our Lichess Opening Explorer, bishop a7, and now a4 was played by Ernst Kasses. a4 isn't necessary for white. You know, I'm not sure that b5 is like... I'm not sure that b5 is a threat. I mean, he's just kind of grabbing space with a4. Certainly white could play other moves, but what's white's plan here is the problem. That's why I don't particularly like d5. Alright, I got unsynced. Ultimately, I don't know what our strategic plan is, just like randomly grabbing space. But I mean, we should have some kind of pawn structure plan, like breaking with c5, but we don't. I just don't know. We really don't have a forward plan. I mean, we're probably just going to use our space and try to knock out that bishop with the bishop exchange at some point. He's just grabbing space now, 98. And you see the Steinitzian retreat of pieces here. I'm certain that I went over this game, but I don't remember. And now queen c2, clamping down on f5, trying to restrict black from playing f5. And ultimately, I guess Ellis Custis wants to push this pawn down the line with 93, and so b4 kind of makes the support of c5. g6 to go knight g7. And I don't know if you want to play bishop h6 or not. This is not a no-brainer, because black was intending to play knight g7 anyway to support f5. Now knight e3, getting out of the way of the c-pawn, and basically white is really just focused everything on preventing f5 from black, and hopefully supporting c4, c5 himself, but not easy to play that. And now black plays f6, but what is this about? I agree. Mr. Coffee asked a question about f6. What does f6 do? I have to say though, it's very hard. It's very hard to say what black should do, because black has so little space. You would like to play f5, but white has 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers against f5, plus the fact that the bishop is pinning the knight on g7. That basically ends up being almost negating the knight on g7. If we negate the knight on g7, it's 1, 2, 3 defenders, 4 defenders. We negate the knight on g7, so it's 1, 2, 3 defenders. White is winning against f5. F5 can't be played unless you take the knight on e3 or something, which would be a major concession. But why f6? What does f6 do? It's to play rook f7. I guess it's to play rook f7. See, this is the only way he could think of getting his queenside pieces out. f6 to support rook f7, to play knight d7, knight f8, and it's a very convoluted maneuver. But clearly that's the problem with not having space. Black doesn't have a lot of alternatives. What would you recommend? King h8 with the idea of rook g8 or something? That's a plausible alternative, right? For black, not a great one though. I mean, what would the most natural thing be? Just to go knight d7, right? What's our plan now? Here, it's out in front of the pawn chain. It can get pinned. There's a lot of things that are kind of artificial about it, but maybe we could try to play king h8, knight f6, knight g8, like a king's Indian. Okay, f6, I get it here, and now we're just really restricting black with rook a e1. This is a weird move. It's he's totally only thinking about restricting black, and then rook f7. Now watch this, king h1, and again it's about just restricting black. He's not doing anything offensively. He's playing king h1 with the idea of g4. And now knight d7, g4. So the first order of business is to just prevent black from being... It's like chess vampirism. He's preventing black from doing anything. If you can prevent your opponent from doing anything, that's one way to win. Maybe a5 for black. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that a5 could be played. At some point. You could play a5. There's reasonable idea there. I don't think like taking the pawn is very impressive. I like this concept of playing a5. Definitely a possibility. Alright, rook a1, rook f7, king h1 here, g4, and then knight f8, then rook g1. And now this is a classic idea, but more common in the Spanish. Basically, this is more like a Spanish than a Joko piano. The classic idea is to drop a knight on f5 as a sacrifice. Basically, white would double up, probably double the rooks on the g file here. There's other games I've seen like this. I'm not sure, maybe Fischer had a game where he did this. But you could play rook g3, rook g1, and then knight f5. Because the pile-up pressure here on the g file is so much that black oftentimes can't take the piece. But now this is a major concession. Bishop takes e3. I mean, if we talk about what did black do wrong, the whole opening is probably not the best system. It's a little too passive. But this move also makes you wonder, I mean, is black really justified like giving up his dark square bishop? There's nothing that's going to dramatically happen this minute, but in the long run, I'm going to get in c4, c5. And eventually the dark squares will be weaker. It's hard to get in there, but it could factor in. He takes with the f-pawn. This is definitely not a no-brainer. Now attacking the head of the pawn chain at c6. It feels like black is desperate. If you play c6, open the c file, maybe there's some counterplay. If you can chip away at d5, the only thing is like, okay, he chips away at d5, he plays e4, some kind of e4 or f5. f5 is never going to happen. And Ellis Casas just goes here. And that's a really nasty diagonal. See, that's a kind of thing where like maybe you don't want to like open that can of worms. So now he takes, white takes with the bishop, and black plays bishop b6, only move. Well, maybe not only move. He has to defend b7, I guess, here. It looks like black is too convoluted, right? Very long maneuvering game. And then knight h4 with the idea of knight f5. Still with the idea of knight f5. And there it is. And black took. At the end of the day, I don't think it's really that easy to point to what black did wrong. I mean, honestly, the whole system is considered to be kind of inferior for black. I would point to the opening and say, like, black should probably try his chances with Petanyi's pawn takes pawn. If you want to, like, be honest, like, you have to play knight f6 in the first place. Like, knight f6 is the best move, without a doubt. It's definitely a mistake in the opening, this whole variation altogether, but it looks like this might be this Petanyi, what's it called, Sashi Kiran thing, Pinter. I don't know if there's any connection between Petanyi and Pinter, but Yoji was a trainer of the Hungarian team for a long time. Petanyi lives in Slovakia, but he's a Hungarian from Slovakia. Possible he had looked at stuff with Pinter, I have no idea. But c takes d4. d6 seems like the best try. This is more of like a hyper-modern approach for black, where you give up the strong point and you put pressure on the enemy center. I honestly like that better than trying to hold up e5. What the classical player did here is like you're trying to hold up e5 with everything you've got, and he ends up in a very passive position. Objectively, it's kind of like Nimzovician. You're probably better off giving up the center and then counterattacking the enemy. It's not easy to say what he did wrong. I am a little suspicious of bishop takes e3, but he was concerned about knight f5. So without a computer, I mean, it's hard to say. You could also say, like, well, c6 is fundamentally flawed because you're attacking, the enemy's strong point. But it looks unclear. Knight f5 is very hard to stop. So now take queen e8. He had set up this defense laterally. This is a famous game. I mean, the queen has over triple. White's space advantage is so big that there's like nothing you could do. It is a really beautiful game. I mean, it's been years since I looked at this. I have vague recollection of it. The idea is very classic. The whole idea of sacrificing knight on f5 was done many times in the Lopez. There's other games in the same book with the same sacrifice probably. Now queen d7, rook takes g7, check here, takes, and then you win. Check this out. Winning back the sacrifice piece with interest. And now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Plus, you can't take on g6. So we're up a pawn with a killer pawn on g6. And it's positionally devastating. So Mr. Coffee, honestly, there was no real answer, no easy answer to your question. Now we have to protect the best pawn. It's funny that Ellis Casas never got in c5. There's your a5. It's a little too late on the queen side. The way he sealed him in here was pretty impressive. Just brutal. Something about ripe apples. This is a very nice move. Rook takes f6. And just brutal. And another beautiful move. Brilliancy prize. He gets a good prize for like style in this game, White didn't just win. He won with style. My friend Emil calls it like total chess. It's not enough to just win, like you have to win in a very elegant way. And the sequence of moves is obviously brutal. All calculated out to the end. Black's like, oh my god, I'm holding a draw. No. Rook h8. Because if you take, check, king moves, takes, king takes, and then h6, and oh, by the way, you're just a little too far away to stop the pawn from queening. Sorry, to get your hopes up. But alright, that was mean. Okay, Snedsteg is next. Snedsteg, what did you say? Thank you. Won't be lurking today. See you later on Twitch. This is a game from the Evil Chess site. Thanks, guys, for your support. We got a follow. We had a couple follows. Hey, Miro. Miro donated 122. I wonder what made you 122. Just making it uneven. I know the contrast on my camera is weird, but I think it looks cool. I've got to fix it. I got to fix that. I was playing with it for some videos. Check out my Kraken videos. Video chess training on YouTube. I forgot what I was saying. I had a Mitch McConnell freeze up there. It's a long day, man. Thursdays is a long day for me. Alright, this is Snedsteg versus some guy who rated 1678 in Rapid. But he's Indian, so you know what that means. It means that they're underrated. Everyone... And Mr. Coffee said they're adding rating points to FIDE ratings under 2,000. So they're going to, try to correct the rating deflation. in the real world anyway. We've noticed it here. A lot of Indian players that come to play in tournaments are always like ridiculously underrated. Okay. Anyway, just so you know, Snedsteg versus Kenny, some player rated 1678 from online chess. Okay. From another chess site we won't talk about. This should not be mentioned. Thanks to everybody for following. Why is my own study not synced? How can I not be synced in my own study? B3, E5, Bishop B2, Knight C6, E3. Oh, by the way, I used your idea, Snedsteg, with that gambit thing, but you know what I did? Check this out. I played white, and my opponent played the... How did this go? I played white, my opponent played the Owen defense, I played D4, they played Bishop B7, I played Knight C3. I keep trying to think, how did I do this? Oh yeah, E6, so my idea was... One game I tried H3, and my opponent went Bishop B4, and I played Knight on G to E2 and sacrificed the pawn, like this. Bishop takes, H3, takes, Bishop here, but H3 just doesn't really cut it, you know? But I figured out a better way to do it. H4 is too blatant, too. My latest try was like... I did Bishop F4. So this has been played before. Jumabayev versus Vallejo. Bishop B4. And then no one played Knight on GD2. So they missed the point. So I had this game yesterday. It was brutal. In like an offhand game, someone played Bishop takes C4, A3, Bishop C3, Knight takes C3, Bishop B7, and then Queen G4, and it was much worse than much worse than like what happened in our game, where it was that English attack where like you had C4 in. I don't know. I mean, it's just funny. This is devastating. Computer says it's +0.5 after King F8. But I mean, Bishop F4 is a very useful move for white, I think. More so than H3. Alright, but anyway, I just want to share that. B3. Video chess training on YouTube. Check out our Kraken videos. Bishop B2. By the way, the reverse Kraken. You can play D3, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, and A3. The white Kraken. Check out my YouTube for more info on the white Kraken coming up. Alright, so B3, E5, Bishop B2, Knight C6, E3, D5, Bishop B5. This is like all your games are, man. This is funny. You're playing one side or the other of this stuff every time. Knight E7 and now Knight F3. So you don't want to deal with that anymore. Like, this gambit is just really annoying. I agree. So you played Knight F3 instead. And it's interesting. I mean, first of all, objectively, I think probably the best line is like takes, A6, takes, and Bishop G3. And I looked at this, but there's really no doubt that black has compensation. After H5, H4. This is the best line if you analyze with the computer. But still, I think, objectively, black has the easier position to play, you know, let's say. I don't know if that game in the database is, like, over the board or some kind of correspondence game. I mean, I guess we could see, but it doesn't really matter. But one thing I think about is, like, these knights, right? When I play the white side of, or the black side of the Nimzo, sorry, if I'm in the black side of a Nimzo, there's some variations where I'll actually not take and give up my bishop, but bring it back. Particularly if it's like a Rubinstein variation where the knights are redundant. If his knights are redundant, it might just justify not giving up that bishop on c6, you know? And that's part of what I would think about here. I mean, here's another question. Like, what about d4? I mean, is that patently bad? I guess he would take. And then if we take with the bishop, he has a6, and we'd have to part with one of our bishops. So that's not so clear. Knight f3 objectively looks like a try. And now after a6, I mean, objectively, you've got to consider bringing your bishop back. This was played in a game. My main concern is, of course, like e4. But I'm not sure how bad this is. I mean, I don't want to go back to g1. So we've got to put the knight on e5 or d4. But which one? Will the knight get trapped? Uber driver. So I guess d4. d4. And then black obviously plays knight b8 with the idea of c5. And then all bets are off because we have no idea what the hell's going on here. White follows up with c4, giving the knight a retreat square to the wonderful c2. Something I've seen happen in the c3 Sicilians. Remember Larson lost to Boris or something like this? Something like this, yes. Something like this. But, you know, not all two positions are exactly the same. A lot of people lost to Boris, Uber driver. If you combined Larson and Petrosian into one person, could they have held against Bobby, you know? Anyway, knight f3. All right, what's the justification now? He's not going for what I said. He's not trying to keep his bishop and keep his knights bottled up. This is interesting. So black played a6, but I mean, that's, wow. A different way of sacking the pawn. See, there's a game... Oh, the computer wanted to play f6 or something? Where did I get f6 in my head? I don't know where I got f6 from. Yeah, I said e4, but I for some reason f6 implanted itself in my brain. But this looks like a French kind of thing now. Now that you have your knight supporting, it's definitely okay to do d4. And obviously if a6, you can bring the bishop back. Petrosian plays bishop f1. Old Tigran, right? Uber driver? We play bishop f1 all day. No, I'm just kidding. No, we go here. This is a different story. But interesting. Okay. So your opponent plays that, and some guy played bishop e2. I don't know these names. It might be OTB or correspondence. I admit bishop e2 isn't too impressive. How about bishop f1 with the idea of g3, bishop g2, and then a late hippo? So bishop takes c6 check. Well, so much for redundant knights. Now we're grabbing the pawn anyway. But on the plus side, the advantage of Sensteg's pawn capture is that in this variation there's less pieces on the board. So black sacrificed the pawn, but there's no knights for black, and there's only like two sets of minor pieces. So his attacking potential is a little bit less than in the other line. But, you know, who's to say what the best move is? Queen g5 is obviously the most forcing try. Bishop g3, and then h5, and now h4 is forced. Queen g6. And so, yeah. And I think the knight for black, you know, white has like if black has like a knight on c6, that knight in that position is pretty important because it helps to support d4 and all the tricks of the knight before and whatever. So it definitely seems like, yeah, this gambit isn't quite as good for black as the other one. Knight c3, bishop g4. And, no Yuri Lapshin for you, huh? Queen c1, queen b1, triple exclam. Queen b1, bishop f5, d3, bishop b4. This is the critical line. Followed by... No, I'm just kidding. So, I don't know. Bishop g4, f3. Do you like... how do you feel about pork chops? I had like venison goulash last night. But this we called the pork chop in the old days. When I was coming up. The bishop is loose now. Yeah, it's clearly. But we have keep an open mind. Got to keep an open mind. We played the pork chop. It's never too late to play the pork chop. Oh, after bishop f5 we have a double attack. That's the problem. Yeah, we got to give up the pawn now. Bishop takes c2. Although d5 is hanging. I guess it's not hanging for long. After queen here, he can protect it. Well, anyway, it's a variation we should check, but it's probably not enough. Alright, so knight e2. I just don't like the fact that knight e2 is kind of passive. But he traded here. This is very greedy. Bishop takes e2 it's exceedingly greedy. Trying to win his pawn back. I mean, what about king takes? If this is like a tournament game, I'm definitely like completely open to king e2. I mean, Kadnov will like move his king all around the board to win a pawn in the French or something. Yeah, king e2 is totally viable. This is a faster game, I guess. So you gave the pawn back. That's a really materialistic cash-in for black. But ultimately, like, where's his king going to go? Is he going to castle queenside into the crushing c-file? Or is he going to castle kingside and, like, hang his h-pawn? So you castled, and you played that. Another materialistic feeling move. Couldn't you just play, like, rook c1 and be killing him? I mean, doesn't this guy need to play something sensible here? Like c6? I would say this is practically forced. I mean... Oh, bishop a3. Okay, that's another option. Bishop a3 is also viable. But at the very least, like c6 at least, and you know, whatever. I mean, come back and he's okay. But to destroy his own pawn structure, he played bishop b4. You know, I guess it wasn't that simple. If you go here, he could take the pawn on a2, I suppose. I'm really hoping he just like takes on d2 and you're clearly better on the 7th. If you go with the other rook, he can play that. But this doesn't... I don't know. This doesn't look great for black. I mean, you just take on c7 with the bishop. Probably. It looks like he's in trouble. But you played queen f3. Black has another chance to play c6, which he does. Yeah, now it feels like black's surviving. Now after d4, he has time to play queen g6 and he's surviving. Feels like you missed your golden opportunity there. This is like a critical moment. Once he plays c6, he's kind of okay. And now it's like equal. I mean, objectively, you could even be worse. If he comes back and he protects his h-pawn, you don't have any breaks. Well, this is like a fast-paced game. I'm not sure about f3. I'm not sure that f3 is your safest option. But you need to get like a quick minority attack going, you know, like yesterday. Maybe you could play something like b4. This was... What you did is kind of double-edged because you create, another weakness at e3. So it's a little bit tricky. I mean, you're probably okay here, but you have several pawn weaknesses that need to be like covered at all times. Do you think I can still play an advantage here? No. Well, I mean, you can always play for an advantage, but I think objectively you're trying to hold. Structurally, you're a little bit worse. I mean, theoretically, if there are no queens on the board, it would be equal, but the queen's a little scary. And your king is less safe. Well, that's good that he was forced to play rook b8, though. Trading queens is definitely a step in the right direction. And after that, you're out of the woods. And I think that now we can conceive of playing for a win. But objectively, it should be pretty equal. Your king is better. This also isn't bad, and you've got b4, a4, b5 on the queen side, so getting the queens off was a good thing. Can you play up? It's too risky. Ooh, king h7 is pretty annoying. Damn. You have another possibility here. Is it going to work, though? I just am curious about g4. This is a really crazy idea. The point would be to play f4. I think it's too slow. It's too much. Yeah, this is a problem after king h7. Wow. He actually has that. And now if you go up, and he goes up, and you go up, and then he's got tricky moves like doubling up here and playing f6, your king ends up being more exposed than his king. It just feels like you're still not better. King h7 is a nice move. Can we sack a pawn somehow? How fast can you play b4, a4, b5? You could just double up on the h pawn, but it takes too long. Yeah, this is unfortunate. But it's good enough, I guess. It's unfortunate to weaken these squares. I guess you didn't have anything better. Maybe you can like sack a rook and mate him or something. Some kind of trick. Well, that doesn't seem right. This is definitely funky. Oh. Yeah, now you have the rook takes h5. That's pretty funny. And you're definitely better. But how are we going to make progress? We're not. We got to get the rook in. So what about rook h8 here? I guess you're still not winning. Why is your pawn not hanging? Oh, you're threatening mate in one. Damn, that was a nasty move. So he could have played f5 check. Pawn takes pawn. How good is f5 check for black? f5 check. You're definitely like fine. The question is, should you take? Because if you take, he can take here, and suddenly you're like worse. So you just have to like go away and then penetrate, and it'll go here. And it's probably some kind of weird draw. Oh, this is interesting too. Now you've got him pinned down. Wow. Got him pinned down and he has no active counterplay. It's kind of funny, like you finally did the minority attack on the queen side. Now it's like principle of two weaknesses. Two weaknesses versus one. What about putting your rook on like a different square? c8 doesn't do anything. What about b5? Obviously, you also have rook f8, rook f7 in some positions. You could transfer your king over here, and then try to play rook f8, rook f7. So your king could access the queen side when you break with b5. There's definitely chances to win here. The a5 seems a bit weird. So what is this, a draw? Or someone lost on time? I'm assuming it's a draw. I think bring the king over to d3, but I don't like a5. So here, let's see. Yeah, you're clearly better, but it's probably a draw. I think you have a way, though. I mean, you definitely have ways to win. Bring your king over, and then play rook f8, and then time a b5. Maybe you could get rook f7 in some kind of position. I don't know. It's probably a draw, though. Okay, interesting game. Move 11 is up next. Thanks, Snetsteg. Move 11, and hey, it's Miro. All right, move 11. Quando. Crooked Ridge J. Thank you guys for joining it. Yeah, you have a lot of interesting chances there. This is Move 11's game. Alright, this is online blitz game played on this site, not on the evil chess site. I'm going to Sicily in October, so this is good practice for me to look at games in the Sicilian. e4, c5, knight f3, g6. You know, as I've said, we should probably consider playing the pterodactyl, move 11. The terrible dactyl. Krakens and pterodactyls. C takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop g7 here, and now Acerbate needs to learn not to play d6, right, Acerbate? If you play the accelerated dragon, the point is to not play the normal dragon. You hate to play dragon. Well, the dragon is dubious according to Stockfish, whereas like the accelerated dragon isn't. Accelerated dragon, I mean, the entire idea of this opening is basically prevent white from playing Yugoslav attack. White can't force a Yugoslav attack, and the sharp lines where white has a theoretical advantage. The problem is the Marazzi more than anything. But move 11, okay, knows what he's doing. He plays accelerated dragon, and his opponent took here. And you know, this is like, I mean, we've seen more and more examples of people doing this because Stockfish says to do this. Or there's so many variations of the Sicilian where I've seen knight takes c6 because the computer likes it. This is not a good version of knight takes c6, though. Honestly, this is like one of the worst, let's say, situations to try to do this. I mean, black has good control of e5. Honestly, like, if I was white and my opponent played this, I would probably be pretty ill. You know, like, this is obviously not really that dangerous. If black wanted to draw or something. But this is objectively best. So now mostly we see the Bodler style thing with bishop c4. But there are some people who will do like bishop d3 and they play knight takes c6 all the time, you know, like in every kind of Sicilian. They do knight takes c6. I mean, what could be more fundamentally wrong? Ulf Anderson says the dragon isn't good because black doesn't have enough control of d5. So let's just ask ourselves that question. If Ulf Anderson says the dragon isn't good because white, has good control of d5, then why the hell is white playing knight takes c6, giving black control of d5? You know what I mean? This is a fundamental mistake. I mean, it's obviously playable in some positions. After bishop e3, knight f6, this is an actual variation now, where I did this. I mean, this is a major variation. e5, and now probably the best move is knight g8. I'd actually prepared to play this the last time. The last time I expected it, I was prepared to play this, but I'd always played knight d5 in the past. But that's a different story. It's a little more justified there. Here it's not justified. Bishop e3, knight f6. Now, this is interesting. See, I wouldn't know if you should play knight f6 right away. The first thing about this position that occurs to me is that like b2 is screaming like Alice in Wonderland, eat me, drink me, whatever. What is going on with the b2 pawn? I mean, it's bad enough what white did, but I mean, this pawn looks pretty sus. He's supposed to bring his bishop out, bishop c4, right, or bishop d3. So white goes here now. Yeah, shouldn't you play rook b8? I mean, I've been playing the English all my life, and that's a problem. He doesn't have anything tricky like this, And if he tries to do rook b1, you have rook takes b2, rook takes b2, bishop takes check. So he has to play something awkward here, like queen c1. Then you're going to do queen a5 maybe, try to force him back. And black has to have at least equality here. It's funny, there's a game from 1996 where a couple masters, black played queen a5. I mean, this is obviously not a bad move. But isn't rook b8 better? What's the problem? I would think queen c1. Oh, he has bishop d4. Interesting. But that would also be possible against queen a5, right? If queen a5, bishop d4 is possible here. Is there any major difference? Queen a5 may be more useful overall than rook b8. But I still like rook b8. Rook b8, bishop d4. This is pretty deep, because if e5, now he's sacrificing b2. So I presume like bishop c5, and this is pretty compromising. It goes without saying that's not great. Black has to deal with this. Interesting. Yeah, I would have played rook b8, and I would have run into this, and I don't know what to do. You could play knight f6. And the position is kind of unclear. Or trade. That seems to help white. I don't think trading seems right. Best is knight f6. Knight f6, e5, knight d5. And this is what the engine says. As usual, e6 is not great. Though it's not easy to find this line for black. You have to go back, allow pawn takes f7, king f7, bishop c4 check, d5. Wow, bishop e5, rook b somewhere. That's a crazy variation. Just to stay in shape. Pretty interesting. Okay, so you played this, and you transposed back to the other position. Yeah, so move 11, that's definitely a mistake. White should not get a book position with the move order he employed here. So you're better off playing one of those other moves. But you know what? You could play something else. I was thinking, You've got a lot of options here, actually. I mean, you could also just like the old Queen C7 or something, you know. Queen C7, maybe D6. Funky Cold Medina played D6. Absolutely nothing wrong with this move. That would at least take care of E5. But what you did is undoubtedly a mistake. Letting him transpose to a legit variation. But then that, okay, now he has to play E5 here. I think you should definitely play knight G8. It's more dynamic than the other line. This allows a lot of simplification, and it looks like if white really knows the line, it can be very annoying. It should be okay for black as well, but the engine definitely likes knight G8 better. My experience is knight G8 is probably better. Also, my experience is that good players don't really play that line with white. I've had it once in a tournament game against like a 2100. But bishop d3 is like a typical, I don't know, theory move. And now you're fine. Castles, queen c7, guarding the e5. How do you win, though, in this type of structure? I think he's actually got some issues about defending the b2 pawn. Let's see. h3, d6. Yeah, I mean, obviously d6 is not forced, but as I've talked about many times in the past, like, if you play d5 in these type of structures, you're gonna like blast it open and simplify a lot. Yeah, I mean, the problem is just a practical one, I think. If you were to play d5, sometimes what happens is it gets very fixed. You know, he can go maybe bishop d4. This isn't going to work here, though. You have e5. So d5 objectively, maybe black's best move. But there's nothing wrong with d6 if you're trying to win and you want to keep the position complex against a weaker player. I think it might be better. You don't simplify at all. You're giving him f4, but you're not simplifying. Now knight d7, yes. I mean, this idea is normal. This idea is normal. Rook b8. I've done the same kind of stuff. Now he does rook b1. a5 is reasonable. You know, he can't play b3. Now this move is this is funny. This looks like he's playing, I don't know, like Skaveningen or something, queen f3. If I were white, I would be a little concerned about this knight. You know, maybe even queen d2. Queen f3 just seems kind of weird here. I suppose it's reasonable. His knight has a square to retreat to. Yeah, now you played a4, though. I don't know. As always, it's hard to recommend. You know, don't be afraid that in some positions it's okay to do this, like knight c5. Once I had this guy who was an online cheater do this against me instantaneously. But there are situations where this is okay. In general, I try to avoid it if I can. I think you should try it. We earlier were talking about a game where Muleskinner was black in a King's Indian attack, and he played a4. I mean, a4 is okay, but it's kind of committal. Feels like your pawn is a little bit of like a liability. It becomes a little bit of like a liability on a4. I'd rather like maintain maximum flexibility. I admit it's hard to decide what to do. A reasonable move might be king h8. I could see how king h8 could be a useful move. Not being on this diagonal at an inconvenient moment, you might play f5. I would definitely consider that move. Obviously, rook b8, rook b4. White can play a3. Maybe you could sack an exchange with rook takes b2, bishop takes c3 in some positions. Definitely rook b8 is more fluid than a4. And then bishop a6, which is like, yeah, been there, done that. I don't like bishop a6 because his bishop is a you know, it is what it is. It's the ghost bishop versus the amputated octopus. e6 is an interesting idea from Outlier. This is an interesting idea. Because ultimately, this is like my friend Alexander Ivanov's favorite pawn structure, which he gets in the Gurgenidze a lot. You talk about c5, c4, but you can also play just like d5 too. Now, e6 is a move that I think we're often afraid to play because it weakens our f6 square a little bit, maybe d6 a little bit. But yeah, here, I like the suggestion of e6. He can play f5, for example, and we'd have to calculate how to handle that. It's a little tricky handling f5, but I think e6 is an interesting and kind of fluid move. I don't really like bishop a6 because this bishop is not that great, but it's not per se a mistake, you know. I think it's okay. It's okay to trade the piece. I don't know which way he should recapture. Clearly, like, this is an issue. If we can wedge our rook on b3. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about d4. d4 doesn't look right for white. I'm not sure what he should do here, but he starts to put his pawns, you know, all on dark squares. Yeah, it looks like Gurgenidze modern rather than a Sicilian now. But if you play d5, he's going to have f5. I've had this kind of structure in the King's Indian a lot. Maybe shift. I am concerned about g4 f5. But as long as your pressure is on e5, I guess you're okay. But what do we do? If we play knight c4, you're fine. Bishop c1. That's not great. So it seems like move 11 has, you know, basically like gained through very slow process here the upper hand. The coordination of these pieces is not great. a4 is defensible. We have good pressure against b2. There are tactics on a3. He can't play f5 because of the weakness of e5. d4 is something of a target. So it looks like you're better. The only thing is, like, you can't play d5 because he'll do f5. So we have to keep fluid. Rook b3 looks like a good move. And then he does that. Okay. I don't understand. How does that work? I mean, the whole point of the position is that you're keeping him honest here. You're supposed to be keeping him honest on e5. You didn't want to ruin the structure. Ruin the structure? Well, the guy's playing f5, man. He's not allowed to play f5. It's better to have a ruined structure than no structure at all. This looks like, what is white doing? I mean, maybe he has some kind of crap, but I mean, he's even pinned here. Open rook d1. Open sesame. But I mean, it's not important. It's just this whole center, man. Nothing important whatsoever. He's only losing his whole center. You're being too pessimistic. I mean, after bishop c5, you're like clearly a pawn up for nothing. I mean, you do have to watch your knight on c4, I guess. But you have like a zillion checks, and white just isn't doing much with the rook on b1, bishop on c1, knight on c3. His queen and rook are good, but he's got two good pieces, and the other three pieces are doing basically nothing. Yeah, you would ruin your structure, your extra structure. So I think you have to keep him honest. All right, maybe you have another move. I don't know, but maybe this isn't bad. But it leaves a4 hanging, which isn't a problem yet, but it could be. And now f6. Yeah, I don't love f6. Again, maybe you're fine, but I wouldn't have allowed it. And now again, what about taking? That would ruin the structure. Time for a Nigel Short quote. Modern chess pays too much attention to things like pawn structure. Yeah, right. Why do I want to take on f6? Well, this is just too inconvenient, I would definitely have taken here. And then he would have taken, and I would have played bishop f8. And I think you have to consider the possibility of bishop h8. Although, we definitely don't normally do that, and I don't want to see g5. I would consider the possibility. I think black would have played a5. Forget about it. Clearly there's no moment where black could have played f5 or driver. Maybe like back here you could have played f5. If you really wanted to. But it's not like a no-brainer. I don't think f5 is such a strong move for white. And on the other hand, I mean, this is a bad move by white, d4. To be honest, he probably would be better off playing f5, but then, why is his rook on d1? His whole position isn't that logical. Black is definitely better. But I don't think we need to do that. This is though. Now, why didn't you take on f6? He has a shot. I'm gonna need to see your license, your chess license. It seems like you have to try to lose here. You just believed him. It was like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something. After pawn takes f6, he has to take here. I mean, this is obviously bad. I can take with the king. Queen takes is okay too. You can lose this pawn, no big deal. You have activity. You're winning a piece. The rook takes. By the way, yeah. So you went here and you allowed the f7 check, figuring that's okay, right? What could possibly go wrong? King h8. You did. What did you do? You self-mated yourself? Bishop g5. There's no even self-mate. I was thinking well, what could possibly go wrong? You allowed bishop g. Sorry, I'm crazy. Bishop f6 check. Stuttering Sam. Bishop g7. What could go wrong here? Queen e4. You played e5 now. Wow. But even here it looks like black is okay. He's starting knight takes a4. But you could play almost anything. Queen d7. How bad is it? The way you played it is kind of risky. But now you did e5. And then d5. Suddenly you have a bad bishop. And all of his pawns. He's forced your pawns to dark squares. And your knight is hanging. What happened here, though? You just resigned? You hung a piece and resigned. I'm not sure even the final position is that clear. I think it was just like a self-fulfilling prophecy and you just wanted to resign, so you resigned. I admit now it's very complicated. Like, I don't know who's better after this. Queen d7, rook e1. It seems like you were just depressed. But even that's not, like, so what? You know, his d4 pawn is hanging. You're just, like, being way too pessimistic about your chances. It seems like, in general. Till you finally hang a piece and resign. So knight takes b2 looks like very messy. After d5, knight takes b2. You're saying they should show at least a rapid game for analysis. Yeah, I mean, I don't like to do the blitz games that much. That's all he has, unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately, some of the viewers only play blitz. I agree. Rapid would be at least the minimum. What is this? What is the time control for this game? This was like blitz. But I mean, you just hung a piece with c5. But like your play like seems so fearful. I don't know. You're afraid to do anything. Like until now, you played normally, and then when you played f5, I don't understand this. Like you didn't want to ruin the structure thing. You're not ruining your structure. You're just taking his structure away. You know, that's not the same. It's not like you ruined your structure. You have a structure that he doesn't have, you know. You just have a c6 pawn and he doesn't. That's not really ruining your structure. I mean, after this, I guess we don't want to drop the c6 pawn, but let's say bishop takes or knight takes. Either way, knight takes, either of these moves. Maybe knight takes is better. It's a tempo. I'll take, like, you know, a structure that my opponent doesn't have any day. This is just extra. I mean, I think you should take the game in terms of the center, you know. The whole point is, like, in the French, white can't play f5 because of the e5. This is such a typical pawn break. All the classical French, all the Steinitz French is, you know, the whole thing is like f5 can't be played because the pressure on e5. Knight d5, queen a7, and there's a lot of checks because he never moved his king. You know, one of the things like most players would do with white in this type of Sicilian would be make a prophylactic move, king h1. Notice our hero here, who's not a particularly strong player, but luckily he was playing the pessimistic move 11, who always believes, like, you know, his position is bad or something. He never played king h1. I mean, it would be good to have the king on h1 so there weren't like 10 different checks that black has. Anyway, move 11. Yeah, just a blitz game. So here's a real game. Wow, 20 minutes? 20 minutes. What? Hey, it's Miro versus Learning Chess. Oh, this is from the tournament. This is from our 20-minute tournament. So we might see a berserk here. This is from thanks Move 11 for supporting the stream. It's from some other streamer's arena tournament. What's your name again? We don't talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. I just assumed we had the 20 We had the 20 plus. No, sorry, we had the 20. No, how was that? I didn't do 20. Did I do a 20? What am I thinking of? Did I do 10-0? I did 10-0. I didn't do 20-0, did I? What the heck was I thinking of? Did I do like 15-0? It was 15. I didn't do 20. 20's too long. I must have done a 15 and started to think it was 20. Alright, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. You know, another thing I was thinking, like, why don't I play the exchange variation against you? Bishop b5, a6, bishop takes c6. I think I did that once. I should use that more, though. I think the exchange variation is very frustrating for some players. Okay, we had at least one game. I remember where you probably played castles like bishop g4. It was 40 and they berserked. Aspirate, are you sure? 120 plus 10. Astrobate's just making shit up now. It's popular today. So bishop c4, knight f6, and yeah, I saw a knight g5. I mentioned this. It's rare to see this in like, you know, strong tournament, but in the GM group of the tournament I played 3 weeks ago. What is it, the Ovested variation? There was an Ovested variation by Fodor Tommy with black. You know, it made me think, objectively, like, this is probably really, you know, worth trying. They went all the way into this line. Like, bishop f1, knight takes d5, c takes d4, queen takes g5, bishop takes b5, check. The grandmaster was black and the weaker player was white. Castles, bishop b7, queen f3. And the funny thing was, like, they got all the way to this position and white, like, didn't know the theory here or something. Was it this position? He didn't know the theory he's supposed to take? Yeah. So white knows this much and then goes wrong. Plays knight c3. But I mean, it's fine, but if you're going to play this in a tournament against a grandmaster, then at least, like, know the theory. He's supposed to play d takes e5, and the guy, like, lost with knight c3. It's come on, you know? I mean, this is, like, unbelievable. Alright, so d3, a little more correct. Bishop c5, bishop g5. What's that? The old bishop g5. I never play the two knights too much, so... Yeah, bishop g5 is kind of a weird move. I mean, it feels wrong. It's like white's good bishop. There's the canal variation, but that would involve not playing... Would that involve knight c3? We could transpose. Oh yeah, bishop e7 is always good. Absolutely, Uberdriver. You can do this. You can come back. Uberdriver knows all the solid tricks. Yeah. No, that's one advantage of not playing d6 too early. Absolutely, you can definitely come back to e7. This is very solid. I don't like bishop g5. It seems fishy to me. Okay, but it looks like it has a reasonable score. But now Hayes Mirror went g5, so this is no going back after that. Yeah, I like Uberdriver's suggestion. But again, you know, I'm normally playing the Italian games, so it's like d3. We would transpose, though. We would transpose. Yeah, I mean, I could face this like anybody else. Bishop g5. d6 is possible. I mean, if you look at my games, just there aren't that many, but hypothetically, let's see. I had 3 games with black. I played h6 twice and d6 once. And on h6, one opponent played bishop h4. I played d6. So it's Skleidson. That's an old Brazilian friend of ours. d6. This is a game from when I first started streaming back in 2016. Yeah, I mean, d6 seems safer, I guess. So you went with g5. Wow. I'm just wondering if you knew this or if you just played it over the board. g5 seems really early. d6, c3. I mean, this bishop is out of play. But the problem is, like, white can play not just like h4, but white can play d4. And if white plays d4 at some point later, basically white will put pressure on e5 and sub incoming. Chess Ibra. We got a sub incoming. Turkey. Young ZY has followed. Sub incoming. I like bishop e7. This is more chaotic. Now a5, a virtual, he knew it. It's a virtual theoretical novelty. I mean, a5 leaves a hole on b5, where a6 doesn't. Trying to find my prime sub. Damn, you better talk to Amazon. Well, I mean, a6 seems more fluid. I'm talking a lot about that today. Queen e7, I had a game like that last week where I got in trouble. Bishop b3, knight d2, knight c4, knight e7. I mean, we're going to get that knight coming in there eventually. I don't really want to put my queen on e7 necessarily. But there's not a lot of ways to like support the e5 point. It's too late to give it up too. And I don't think the London is going to work necessarily, but let's see. There's some guy named Alexei Shirov who played knight h5 here. Have you guys heard of him? And Ganguly played it. That's good company, man. It's never bad to play knight h5 and go for that bishop, apparently. You have to calculate. You know, that requires calculation. Knight takes e5. This is deep, right? Not just calculation, but evaluation. So calculation and evaluation. Knight takes e5. So what's the point? See, I don't like the look of this. Knight takes e5, bishop takes e5. Pawn takes e5, queen takes h5. I don't like the look of it. It doesn't look good. There must be something else. What am I missing? So it must be knight takes, knight takes, knight takes c6. Surprise! Is there some kind of weird, like, surprise like that? Surprise! There has to be some sort of in-between move. That's a minor problem. So he can't play knight takes c6. After this, he has to, like, take back. And we're up a piece. Or maybe he can do something else. Bishop f7, holy shit. This is for real. Wow, this didn't happen in either game. That shit's crazy, man. There's a 2600 playing Ganguly. Zhubov is like endgame grinder. So he's not doing this calculation. Wow, knight takes e5, knight takes g3, bishop takes f7 check. This is right up Hayes-Miro's alley, by the way. King e7. Holy shit. Knight g6 check, king f7, knight h8 check. Easy to calculate this. Queen takes h takes g, and white is slightly better. Absolutely easy. Shirov knew it all the time. Wow. Imagine being the guy playing Shirov, and you're like questioning your calculation here. He was like, no, I don't want to bother, it's Shirov. Knight c5 can't work. Damn, dude. But they probably missed this whole intermezzo variation. Bishop takes a 7 check. This isn't easy. You know, it's not even for sure that Shirov has seen this position before. He's probably figuring it out over the board, but his calculation is pretty good. So h takes g, queen f6, and it's unclear. This would be an ending. You could probably go all the way out to this point. That's a nice it's a nice pawn structure. Nice car you've got there. Is that a Bugatti? The full car. Driver, you're like obsessed with f takes g, man. What is with you and the f takes g? It's like obsessive compulsive disorder. These double pawns are nice and compact. It's more in the center. It's not about that, man. It's about this. This is about pawns, not about pieces. White needs the pawns to play. It's not about open files. The pieces aren't even developed. I mean, it's your pawns here for white. The pawns are strong. That's white's whole advantage there. That's a pretty cool variation. I would have rejected it out of fear. So c3 here. This has been played in one game, a5 and then a4. Automated response. I mean, honestly, he can't play like d4 or something. I would be concerned that's a thing, but it doesn't work yet. So Gabrielian is a grandmaster. He lost with white, knight on bd2. And now there's a few games. This Demchenko had another game. A4 feels kind of robotic, but okay. There's a Hare Krishna game, and he actually is one of the few players who does play this kind of stuff, though he often plays like h3 in the Joko piano. A4, castles. So Hare Krishna, I mean, somebody castled here. We transposed to another variation. I guess with like a later bishop g5 or later g5. This literally transposes. And then a5 is more common. I mean, there's a lot of details here that are complex. White has certainly not refuted your g5. That's deep, Uber driver. You're kidding me, right? Queen d2. I'm not going to make fun of you now. That's really a bad idea. Queen d2. That was played in a game by a 2100. It's right on your level, man. Queen d2, very natural. And it's subtle, too. Like, black would never guess what he's doing. What's up, Tazik? I think the queen is a bit more mobility on the white squares. So king g7, I think Hayesmiro knew what he was doing now. He had transposed. And now rook e1. This supports the e4 pawn, which threatens d4, essentially. Wow. So it's Hu Yifan versus Ding Liren. I mean, did they face each other in that one Wikanze, where Hu Yifan played and got destroyed by everybody? Do you remember that when she lost a drawn king and pawn game against Magnus? That seems about right. 2017. That was horrible for her. That was the worst king and pawn game blunder ever for a grandmaster. It's a lot of pressure, but wow. So g4 looks like it's good, and now someone played. This looks like something Uber Driver would do. Bishop h4. That's what she did, and she lost. I'd like to see an Uber Driver Hu Yifan match. The other player played the more natural knight h4, lost anyway, after knight h5. What about this? I mean, how bad is this? It looks like white's okay here. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. So this looks interesting. It's a specific mistake in this exact position. So that's why rook e1 is not played much. So something specifically about knight on bd2, that g4 isn't as good now. I'm not sure I really understand. Is it relevant that white has the e1 square? I guess the rook defending f2. I mean, still you can't move the f pawn, but it doesn't hurt. I mean, clearly you understand why white played rook e1 to support e4, but also knight there. It looks like a normal move. Bishop g4 is not uncommon. I always say it's always bad in the double king pawn openings, but specifically in this type of position where you've played g5, I think it's often okay. And clearly to drop back here. But having said that, I am very wary about something getting in. If h3, bishop h5, you have g4 threats. But I am wary about something getting into the f5. I mean, this bishop kind of protects this diagonal. So as always, we don't want to give it up for sure. And if we do get attacked, do you really want to go back to h5, giving up control of f5, for example? Now you did knight h5. Whoa. So now if h3, we what do we do? Can somebody explain to me what's happening now? Are you ready to play f5? Hayesmiro was clearly playing f5. I think a mosquito bit me. What is going on here? If this move and we go where? You want to go to e6 or what did you have in mind here? So on discoveries you can just take on g3. It's no problem. Most likely. So he plays knight f1 and then f5. Well, there's a shocker. White a little bit yeah, not on your level. laying down to die. I mean, he played too passively here. This seems like White's last chance for something. He can't just sit there and let you kill him with like f5. He's got to play h3. So he's got to play h3. Wow. And the computer wants to play knight takes g3 now. I thought you could retreat. I'm completely off base, apparently. Wow. I mean, you could, but the engine likes White better here. Wow. g3. Sorry, d4. I'm having a Freudian slip. It's not that clear. It's really complicated, actually. Knight takes. This could get crazy. I wonder, what did you intend to do? Like, if you played h3? You're going to trade in f3? Yeah. But, I mean, I'm very concerned about your white squares here. He takes with the queen. And now, what are you going to do? You're going to play f5, so you're going to take his bishop and play f5? And it's like a... Who the hell knows what's going on after f5? It's white squares versus dark squares. But it's kind of messy. If pawn takes pawn, you could try like d5, but now I wish you had played a6. Yeah, I guess you have rook takes f5 there. Surprisingly, threatening that. So d5. Wow. Because if you take on f5, he has knight e4. This still might be good for black. Well, if you move the bishop, you're threatening d5. If he occupies d5, you can always just flush him out. Yeah, it's pretty dicey for white with the f2. So it's not that bad. Knight g3, queen g3. This is very critical. Knight g3, queen g3. Apparently bishop... Yeah, f5 is playable. Why is white better here? Wow. He doesn't have to take. Wow, h4. Oh my god. Yeah, it's totally crazy. Okay, so h3 was his best shot, and it's very, very close after that. But he played kind of passively, just allowing you to play f5. This doesn't seem as good. It's basically the same thing, but like an improved... It feels like an improved version. I mean, you are kind of... totally gone on the light squares, but at the same time, like, the guy has no bishop. He has like the ultimate London bishop. So knight f6 and then Shirov. It's like Shirov. It's like the old days. Shirov had this match on the Internet Chess Club against some computer back in the like, oh god, it must have been around 2000. Watching Shirov like crush some engine. Ironically, it was a Joko, like, kind of line where Alexei was black. He just kept killing it in these, like, closed structures. Like, the old computers that were, like... It was just that classic old computers are weak against, like, closing it up and, like, mating them. He just kept killing it with the same thing. Type of thing. It's a King's Indian. Uh-oh. Hold up a second here. Wow. Is that a problem? That's interesting. You could also just pass and like retreat your bishop or something. You have knight takes e5 as well. But probably h4 is even better. And then so h5, g4. I can't believe you played c6 here. Seriously? He's totally tied down to f2. Can't we just continue the King's Indian? After g5? What is white doing? Is there some way he can stop you? And this looks really good. You're winning. So c6 is almost like you're attacking on the wrong side. You're doing what Grunfeld did against Eliscassis, but you have a little bit of a better position than Grunfeld had against Eliscassis. It's like night and day. Check the king side out. You took a break to play c6, giving him a little bit of time. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know what to do with white here, but I guess he could have played c4. At this point, what does the d4 square matter? It probably doesn't matter anymore. He went here, take, and now e4 is a thing. You did h5. And here you have e4 winning a piece. But he has knight takes h4. It's an unpleasant surprise, that move. With knight f5 fork. Damn. Just when it looks like he's dead, you can't get in g4. He's like queen h7. This looks like a beautiful move. But white has time for maybe one last defensive salvo. Maybe black. Maybe you should be playing the King's Indian instead of the Benoni all the time. That's the ultimate London system bishop. You could play like e3 and h4 and just beat him slowly, a piece up on the queen side. This is probably not black's best move. You're basically strategically up a piece. You insisted on playing for a mate. Yeah, I mean, c6 wasn't the right idea. It was definitely not the best. And this is also, like, weird. I mean, white has bishop h3. I think now it's, like, time. It's just about time. Muro's down to 50 seconds, a minute, to his opponent's 15 minutes. So he's kind of making some inaccuracies. But suddenly, like, this is hanging, but h5's hanging. Oh my god, what about h5? Check. Check. Oh. Seriously? So this position here after queen e2, it's like game over. You could have just played knight e4 immediately. Does he have a defense to that? Not really. It was just like, he has a move? Are you serious? He has like, no. I was going to say he has like bishop takes e3, but it doesn't work because check, king h2, knight takes e2, and you're covering d4. Otherwise, he would win your queen with bishop d4, no joke. But it's rather important that our knight is controlling the d4 square in that variation. Yeah, I think you're just winning. This is crazy, though. I mean, you basically broke your own structure. Is bishop h2 any good? Here? Not really. Oh man, it looks ugly. I don't know, dude. That's pretty ugly. Seriously, knight f2 check. King here. Well, you're losing a rook with check. So that can't be too good. No, it looks like the... Objectively... He has to play king h2 or something. But I mean, this has to be pretty bad for white. I mean, I was thinking about this. You know, you got e5. This looks brutal. It has to be winning for black. So really, this is your fatal error. I mean, breaking the structure. And then forgetting that your h5 is hanging. If only your queen was on g5, it's probably winning. Or e5. Or rook on e5 or something. This is a disaster. And now you're just down in exchange. Down in exchange. Is there any hope taking this? There's still a very tiny hope. King e7. Maybe we pick a different square. But he's got rook f3. That's a really annoying move. He probably shouldn't have played rook h8 check. But I mean, I think you're still lost. You're lost, yeah. It's lost. That was a silly game to lose. But I mean, this guy is so weird, you know. He plays for time, but not consistently. Weird account. Alright, Miro. Interesting game. Knight f2 threatened mate. Sorry, where? Huh? Oh. Wait, what? Knight f2 threatened mate. What do you mean, knight f2 threatened mate? Knight f2 threatened mate? Knight f2 threatened mate. Ah, then there's g4 unthreatened mate. Or 2 pawns up in a rook ending, which also doesn't look too healthy. Or there's also g3. But I like this. Uber driver instinctively senses the mate in ones, like the classic gorilla. Alright, gorilla. Thanks guys for watching. Thanks for your support. Our rating up to 1281. We've got 39, so about approximately 35 days to go till we're World Senior. About a month and 2 weeks. Let's see, 24th of October. What is that? We got a month and 2 weeks. 6 weeks. 6 times, yeah, 40 days. Thanks everybody for submitting the games, and yeah, 3.5 hours, good stream. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to check out Kraken video chess training. These Thursday streams never lasted more than 2 hours during the summer. Well, I don't think that's true, but it depends. Usually my morning streams are shorter. I'll see you guys later. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.